Arel is a boy from a family gifted in both magic and swordsmanship, but he is labeled as classless. However, Arel believes he can endure and soon discovers that he is the strongest mage in the world, possessing an extraordinary power that will amaze everyone. The story begins in a quiet and cozy village, where in one of the houses a family is eagerly awaiting to find out which class their son will be blessed with. Even though he himself doesn't seem as excited as the others, his little sister is so happy that she's sure her brother Arel will get the most powerful class. The mother comments that the boy will then become very popular among the girls, but the little girl, in a daze, responds that Arel is too young to be thinking about such things. The father points out that he was surrounded by kittens when he was his age, but none of that seemed to impress his son, who stayed away from the conversation. Although this issue of being graced with a class was also on his mind. In this world, God blesses every human being with a class when he reaches the age of 10. Then the skills necessary to perform their role are passed on to that person, which can range from a powerful wizard to a simple baker. After the family gathering, the moment finally arrives when the blessing ritual begins, and one of the community's religious figures takes the lead in the process in the city temple, in front of a statue of a goddess. Soon the first child is called to the stage. Then the religious man places the scepter on the boy's forehead and feels the power of the flames in him, as well as the smell of iron and hammer. And thus, the boy becomes a blacksmith. As time passed, and the children presented themselves to receive their classes, Ariel's sister took pride in the bloodline to which they belonged, which would certainly influence the blessing and make her brother one of the powerful class. When Ariel is called, everyone present is eager to know the future of the village's most famous couple, known as representatives of very advanced classes, the Sword Princess Farah and the Archmage Leon. On stage, the religious man asks Ariel to close his eyes so he can feel the goddess's blessing. However, the boy feels absolutely nothing, as does the person responsible for the ritual. The public begins to become anxious in the face of this lack of response, though, after analyzing this rare case, the religious man comes to the conclusion that Ariel is a classless child. The sister is outraged and refuses to believe this is the truth, just as the parents are very frustrated. After this event, Ariel is back at home, training in the backyard with the sword and being comforted by his parents that since they will work after they retire, then the boy does not need to worry about getting a job. Ariel insists that he doesn't want to be a burden to his parents. Then, the little sister, pretending to be the older sister, arrives to say that she will help the guy, as she always did. Tired of this talk, where he always seems like the poor guy, Ariel gathers the family together to make one thing very clear. He doesn't care about this whole classless thing. After all, he studied fencing with his mother since he was little, and even if he didn't gain any classes, he can still wield a sword and his hard work will pay off someday. The mother is moved by the boy's maturity at such a young age, and his father is confident that Ariel can turn fate in his favor when he grows up, just like the little girl always knew her big brother was the best. Tired of being treated this way, Ariel leaves to continue his practice at the training ground. Arriving there, two boys simulated a duel where both demonstrated impressive sword technique. According to them, having a class is amazing because they could feel the strength flowing from within their bodies. When Ariel shows up, the duo recognizes him as being out of ritual class, and asks what he's doing there. Ariel explains that he just came to train like anyone else. Then, one of the boys tells the advantage that they, as swordshines, don't need to train and just come to the training ground to check their skills. To demonstrate what he's talking about, the boy invites his partner to start the duel again. Then the duo once again displays that strength that Ariel never had and never will. With each blow they struck, the heavy sound of air along with the collision of swords suggested that they were two powerful 27-year-old barbarians from Gladiando. Watching the fight, Ariel ponders that the first technique a swordsman learns is basic fencing, which in itself is enough to make these two boys quite capable fighters. However, the observer didn't want to just watch, so he called any of the boys to train with him. The cockier of the two gives a mocking laugh and points out that the intruder doesn't stand a chance, but he's sure he'll give in, angry at the guy's certainty. The challenged person first asks if the challenger has divine protection, even if he is classless, which Ariel confirms without much enthusiasm. Divine protection is another blessing granted by the goddess, but unlike classes, absolutely everyone has the right to receive this gift as soon as they are born. This protection is like an invisible web that wraps around the body and absorbs damage. But of course, if you take too much of a hit, you'll end up feeling the pain. This way, the cocky guy can fight without fear of taking his rival to the grave. However, Ariel asks that the opponent also be prepared to burn his tongue. This provocation makes the brat even angrier, and this anger makes him move forward without the dispute even formally beginning. Ariel thinks quickly and not only blocks the blow, but also spins his sword to open his opponent's guard, leaving the boy completely furious. Driven by the force of hatred, the suspect attempts another sword strike, but is again stopped by his opponent's block. Next, the fight is shown to be completely controlled by Ariel, and since he doesn't want to let this go, Morenta even calls his colleague to join his rival, a request that he promptly fulfills. Ariel escapes a cowardly attack from behind, but he doesn't complain, as he loves challenges. And having two opponents of the same age makes this training very beneficial, since he was always being scolded by his mother during training at home. At this point, Moretta begins to complain that his partner didn't attack correctly, making Ariel wonder if these classy people can't learn to work as a team. Because of the anarchic way they fight, they might even be easy prey. Convinced of this, Ariel advances and knocks Patinia out of the duo with a blow to the chin. Now all that's left is the alpha of the duo, the final boss, who threatens his opponent with words. But when it was time to really show it, he tripped over his own companion and was left completely exposed to a blow to the back of the neck, which was the flat part of the blade, without using the cutting part. Otherwise, the worst would happen. As if the shame of having lost in those conditions wasn't enough, the duo still grumbles that Aro took them, and since they didn't accept defeat, the three agree to a rematch. However, another boy arrives at the training camp and tells the losers to stop this nonsense. After all, on a real battlefield, no enemy will care about the crying of these two clowns. The cocky one of the duo immediately insults the guy, but his colleague tells him to calm down, seeing as this redhead is a tough guy. That said, the redhead approaches Arel and recognizes him as the son of Farah, the princess of the sword, since the skill he has in fencing could only have been inherited by that warrior. Either way, he tells this victory not to go to the boy's head, so challenge him to a duel to show this classless man what a true swordsman is capable of. Bettina tells Morento that this redhead has some relationship with the head of the guard, and he himself confirms that Captain Evans is his father. Hearing that name, Ariel remembers that Evans is the guy who once went to his house to call his mother to hunt demons. However, he looks nothing like his son, as the adopted son had a much more rigid and suffering appearance. Revo is angry at having his father mentioned and makes it clear that the captain is not only a master of the sword, but also a leader respected by all. Still, the son doesn't understand how Arel's mother can be considered the #1 Zine sword in the village. Unconvinced, he asks if Arel agrees with this, and he confirms that his mother is literally the most powerful person in the village. Redhead then remembers that children inherit their parents' talent, and that's why he's going to beat up this brat and prove that his family is much stronger than his. Furthermore, he had already been using the sword for over a year and had already learned intermediate techniques, so he would definitely defeat this brat. Therefore, as he has shown from the beginning, the area is not one to shy away from a fight, so the two immediately begin a dispute. This fight clearly demonstrates that it is a level above the previous one. This doesn't just impress the two previous rivals, but also the current challenger, who, although he admits that this fight is more balanced than he imagined, has a card up his sleeve for the crucial moment. In turn, RL analyzes that the anger that the opponent is feeling is making him strike in a more sloppy way, which can be a disadvantage. Taking advantage of this, RL quickly crouches after defending a spear strike or a thrust strike with the opponent's guard open. However, the redhead responds quickly with his twin blade slashed skill. On reflex, Ariel defends himself from the first, but the second cut hits his divine protection. The injured boy smothers the injured boy with his hand, unable to understand how his rival managed to land 2 blows at once, while the redhead takes advantage, saying that someone without class could never defend against such a technique. Either way, he recognizes that the kid has balls to accept this challenge. Days later, Ariel is woken up by the most annoying alarm clock on the face of the earth, which in this case is his sister. He accidentally headbutted the poor girl as he stood up, which ended up being an unintentional act of revenge. During breakfast, she asks her little brother to stop working out so hard, as one day she will create a world where the poor guy can live comfortably. Hearing this, Ariel gives a hearty laugh and says goodbye to her family to go to training. With his departure, his sister expresses concern that Ariel is staying late, training every day after coming home exhausted from the beating he took. However, to calm the child's mind, Farah takes the little girl to a chest, where several swords that were broken by Ariel during her training were stored. In other words, the guy knows how to handle himself. Even calmer, the boy's sister promises to make the world a better place for him. Meanwhile, Ariel focuses on her daily training and shows that she has learned the double blade attack, as she only let herself be hit so she could assimilate this technique. Speaking of which, a blow appears from Takaya to ambush the human, but Ariel finishes off the creature with this very ability. However, a deep, sinister roar echoes from within the forest and indicates that another, much more serious challenge lurks among the trees. Fearing that the village would be attacked, Ariel runs to alert the guard. However, a child's desperate cry makes him run into the woods. When he reached the injured person, it was none other than Redhead, who challenged him days ago. And on the other side was a hobby goblin, a type of creature that never appears around these parts. Besides him, larger goblins were dead near the Redhead's training platform, which indicates that he killed the monsters while training. Given the enemy's size, Arel believes he needs to focus more on his base than on his wrist movement, as timing will be crucial to hitting this giant. With this strategy in mind, Ariel adjusts her footwork and delivers the twin blade strike at just the right time. That's how it will be at RB Koblin. After that, seeing that the redhead's holy water broke on the ground, the boy gives his own to the injured man to regenerate his divine protection. When drinking the water, the redhead gets better quickly. Just to question how, without the classic yellowish twin blades. Then the boy calmly explains that he had to train a lot to develop such a complex technique. Furthermore, he notes that he noticed how Red used this move several times in their fight, and was beaten in that way that Ariel was able to learn later. In fact, he wants a rematch, which his rival accepts because he was saved, since that way the two don't waste time and go to the exchange right there. Already leaving, the two use the twin blade strike at the same time, but Ariel's power had one more cut. Then, when 2 cuts from each fighter absorbed each other by colliding, the latter crossed the field and hit the target squarely. The redhead remembers that the name of the skill is twin blades and not trembling. So, Ariel explains that there is no need to get caught up in these limiting details, as the important thing is to model a certain technique to better serve in moments of battle. The redhead doesn't accept any lesson from someone without class, so he raises his sword once more, keeping in mind that he learned fencing from his father, Captain Ivans, so he can't lose under any circumstances, especially to a kid who hasn't even received a class from the goddess. Be that as it may, one thing is certain. You need to be careful against this opponent. However, even though he promised to be careful of the 3rd cut from the twin blade, Redhead falls under the same attack and loses the duel. He asks if Ariel went easy on him in the last fight, since he's visibly much faster than before. However, Ariel explains that it was thanks to his rival that he saw his limitations and evolved to overcome the weaknesses that led to his last defeat. Days later, during an evening tea, he will tell the family that Evan's son went to Brazia today, a place called the City of Swords, where Faraja was part of the local guilds before getting married. Ariel feels like going to a place like this, but wonders how far someone without class could go. Wherever it is, he'd like to find out. This will only be possible if he tries. This concludes today's episode of this anime. Wait for us in the upcoming episodes. If you liked the video, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell to receive all that is new. 5 whole years pass by since that day, and our final decides to leave on a journey to Brea, the kingdom known for its swordsmanship. Both his mother as well as Captain Evans got their training from Brea, and Errol wants to be the best of the best, just like them. On his way, he is accompanied by a couple of strangers, 2 of them being swordsmen of a high caliber. The guy has the barbarian class, whereas the woman is known for her dual-wielding class. Both of them want to hone their skills in brecha as well, but they can't seem to get along and are always at each other's throat. The cart driver tells them to settle down as all of them are going to the same location, but the man is too much of a misogynist and wants to send the woman back to the kitchen. Before they can argue more, however, the cart driver shouts at them to get their swords ready as they have got trouble. Errol calmly looks up and spots a horde of orcs alongside their huge leader, blocking their way with no intentions of letting them leave with their lives. 2 of the kids in the cart get scared and ask the barbarian guy to save them. But the barbarian, true to her name, is a total jerk and a coward who claims that he is not willing to put his life on the line for someone else and jumps from the cart before running away. The woman follows him, claiming that everyone is on their own in this world. The cart driver gets worried, wondering whether he can outrun the horde with his cart and the passenger. But before he could do anything, Errol climbs down the cart without a single word and starts moving towards the monsters. The driver tells him to back off and run for his life, but Errol simply ignores him before dashing towards the first orc and stabbing it in the heart. The driver is shocked by his incredible speed and accuracy, while Errol simply uses instant transmission and keeps disappearing and appearing in front of the orc, taking them down one by one. Unfortunately though, he gets surrounded by a bunch of orcs on all sides, which means that he can't really use his dash skill anymore. But to the driver's surprise, Errol uses a legendary trick known as the blade dance, where he spins around like an idiot, cutting everyone down all at once. The cart driver doesn't understand how Errol can use that skill, since it is only used by the swordsmen with the sword princess class, and they are always women. Errol, however, isn't bound by the gender norms, as he wants to be the part of the LGHDTV community. So, he runs towards the orc leader, dodging its attack expertly, before jumping on top of him and burying his sword deep within the orc's skull, killing it immediately. He finally returns back towards the shock driver and tells him to continue the journey to Brea. While one of the kids asks what class he belongs to, he simply replies that he doesn't have any class, which completely shocks everyone. He remembers how 5 years ago, when he showed his mother the new twin blade skill he learned, she thought that she was imagining things. But when Errol told her that he is training to replicate any skill he sees, she is beyond overjoyed and promised to teach him all of the skills used by the Sword Princess class. Back in the present, he is woken up by the driver, who tells him that they have reached Briesta, the land of swords. Errol climbs down the cart and witnesses the town center flooded by people with swords strapped to their waists. Errol turns towards the driver and asks whether he is an advanced level swordsman. At first, the driver claims that he is just a cart driver, but Errol knows that only good swordsmen can identify the moves he was pulling on the spot. The cart driver admits that he is from the Holy Knights class, which is a pretty good class, but he gets bored of fighting so much, so he prefers to sometimes kick back and relax while pretending to be a normal driver. The Holy Knight realizes that this is probably Errol's first time in the city, and tells him that he needs to find a guild for himself first, as without a guild, he won't be able to fight in any tournaments. And in this city, fighting and winning the turns is the main way swordsmen prove their worth and earn money. Errol replies that he doesn't care about the money, but he wants to fight the strongest swordsman this place has to offer him. The driver tells him to be wary of toxic corporate guilds, as they can suck your soul, and not in a good way. With that, the driver turns back and leaves, while Errol moves into the city, looking at all the different people announcing their guilds, hiring people, and swordsmen getting in line to try their luck for the better guilds. On the way, he ends up bumping into a blonde lowly who immediately latches onto him like Headless, telling him that she is the member of a famous guild and wants him to join them. Errol is immediately wary of her since she seems very desperate for members, so he refuses. The lowly, however, doesn't leave him alone and keeps pestering him to join their guild again and again, but Errol's is not a simp and keeps refusing. He asks her what is the strongest guild here and begrudgingly replies that the Shadowblade Guild is one of the strongest right now since it has 8 class of swordsmen. He asks her for the directions and immediately moves towards the guild. He gets stopped on the way by the guard, who directs him towards the reception for the test. In the reception, he finds a huge line of budding swordsmen willing to try their luck to enter the famous guild, which excites Errol as well, who wonders what kind of amazing people he would have to fight against. But when his chance comes to register, the receptionist laughs at him for being a classless loser, claiming that only people with an advanced swordsman class can apply for the guild trials. Errol claims that he is sure he can pass their trial, but the receptionist refuses to register him. Saddened by this, he decides to leave when he spots 3 of the ranked swordsmen entering the hall, who are immediately treated like celebrities. He doesn't really care much about the theatrics though, and immediately turns towards other guilds. But one by one, he gets rejected by all of them on the basis of him not having a class. Tired, he goes back into the city, taking out the letter his mother gave him and told him to find her old guild, since they will surely help her find something. He wonders whether his mom knew that he would have this much trouble, but he is thankful nonetheless. Before he can even read the letter though, the blonde Lowly latches onto him once again, claiming that they are still ready to take him in. But Arrow refuses again. She literally starts begging him to join the guild, telling him to do it as a charity, and points at a beautiful guild house, claiming that it's her guild. This surprises Arrow a little, but the Lowly replies that their guild known as the Dragon Fang used to be the best in the country for a very long time, but lately it's gone to ... and currently they are the weakest, but she wants to bring it back up to its former glory. The name Dragon Fang suddenly rings a bell as he remembers that his mom once told him about the leader of her guild, who was a dual-wielding swordsman who named the guild Dragon Fang after his special move. He quickly takes out the letter to look for the name, and it in fact is the guild that his mom was talking about. He decides to go in with her, which makes her very happy, but the moment they enter the room, he finds an old drunk man with only one arm on the couch. The man tells Errol to go somewhere else since this guild is doomed, and walks off, while the Lowly tells him that he is her father, who used to be the second best swordsman of the city, but ever since losing his arm, he has never been the same. Errol, however, surprises her by saying that he wants to join the guild. This makes the Lowly really happy, and she quickly drafts up an agreement which Errol fills up and hands it back to her. She reads it before asking why he left the class column blank. That's when Errol replies that it's because he has no class. Bali snaps and gets a sword out, claiming that she thought he might be an advanced class swordsman since he was acting so hard to get. But before she could say any more, the door opens and a red-haired beauty named Rai enters the room. The Lowly Shidawidi immediately runs towards her, crying that this classless idiot deceived her into joining the guild. This gets Rai's immediate attention, and she looks towards Errol, claiming that she never thought she would see him here. Errol is confused and asks how she knows him. And Rai looks surprised, claiming that they were from the same village and trained together. That still doesn't ring a bell, but finally he realizes that the red-haired boy that he fought so many times before was actually not a boy, but a girl. The Lowly knows about the story as well, and asks Rai whether this is the classless guy who defeated her when she was young, as she always thought that the story was a myth. Rai, however, is still stuck on that loss and challenges Arrow to a match immediately. The fight starts, and Rai immediately uses the twin slash attack, which Arrow thinks he can counter, but to his surprise, Rai's slashes blast through his own and hit him straight in the chest. This confuses him, but Rai reveals that she has the Power Swordsman class, which is why she is able to use a sword that is 5 times heavier than a normal sword, which means that she has 5 times the power in each sword strike. Errol is impressed by the fact that she has still retained her speed, even after using a heavier sword, but that speed is nothing in front of his own speed. The next time she attacks, he creates an after image of himself, which distracts Rai while he appears behind her and hits her in the back. Rai is confused and tries again, but the result is the same. She can't believe that Errol is using a technique which is only used by the most advanced level swordsman, while Errol realizes that she is too tanky to take down with his normal attacks. Rai also knows this and tries to end the fight with her heavy blows, but Errol uses his mother's signature counter, which brings Rai to her knees, and the fight is over just like that. With that, the Lai's demeanor changes completely, and she welcomes him once again to their guild and tells him that their guild is in crippling debt right now. To get out of debt, they will have to enter the tournaments and fight as a 3-man group against other guilds who will have all 5 members in a team. Errol, however, is excited at the prospect of fighting against strong opponents, and looks forward for the opportunity to hone his skills even more. But that's where this video ends. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Arl wakes up the next morning and remembers that he is now part of his mother's former guild. He walks downstairs to see Reiner and Lilia sitting in the common room. Lilia welcomes him, but Reiner doesn't utter a word, so Errol concludes that she is still holding a grudge against him for her humiliating defeat in their duel. Lilia announces that they will be entering the upcoming guild tournament over the weekend, since they meet the minimum requirements to register. Errol doesn't know much about the tournament rules, so Lilia decides to give him a breakdown. He explains that the tournament is a one-on-one elimination style match, and the guild with no members at the end of each duel loses. She also explains that guild teams are limited to 5 members, so they'll need to put in extra effort since they are a team of only 3. Reiner doesn't fancy their chances in the tournament, but Lilia assures her that they are unlikely to be matched up against an A-rank swordsman. Arel doesn't understand the ranking system. So, Lilia explains that heroes are ranked from D to A ranks, with the strongest swordsmen ranked as A rank. She points out that there are about 500 swordsmen in Brescia, and only 20 of them are A rank. She reveals that both she and Reiner are B-rank swordsmen, and she assumes he also falls into the B rank since he defeated Reiner in their duel. She is certain they will make it through the tournament if they don't get matched up against an A rank. She decides to go over to the Colosseum and check out the tournament brackets so she can know which guild they'll be facing off against. Reiner tries to leave Errol in the common room, but he demands to know where she is going. She reveals that she is going to train. Errol wonders what skill she has as a power swordsman besides her brute force skill. Reiner reveals that she possesses the gut skill, which makes her divine protection last longer than that of an average swordsman. Errol fancies her skill and he wishes he could learn it. He walks up to Reiner and sincerely begs her to hit him with her sheathed sword. Reiner refuses because she doesn't want to do him any favors, but Arl insists because this is a good opportunity for them to build a lasting relationship. Reiner misunderstands Arl's intentions, so he explains that he wants to obtain her gut skill indirectly by getting her to hit him with her sword repeatedly while his divine protection is down. Reiner scolds Arl for being so dumb that he forgot skills are blessings from the goddess and not something that can be chosen freely. Arl reminds her that he learned the twin blade strike and the shadow skill without getting blessed with it. Reiner still isn't convinced, so they go down to the training grounds, and Arl draws her sword with ease. Reiner is surprised that he can handle her sword so well without the brute force skill, but reveals that he has more brute force than she does because he built it up while learning his other skills. He reminds her that effort can match talent with dedication, and Reiner is convinced. She decides to help him with his training, but warns him not to complain because she won't hold back. She begins smacking Errol with her sword, but Lilia suddenly comes running in a panic. She reveals that they were matched up against the Black Blade Guild, who are currently the strongest party in the city, with 8 A-rank swordsmen. She is certain the guild boss will pit their strongest members against them, but she is sure they will win if they take them on as a team. She suddenly notices that Arl is beaten up and she assumes they got into a fight, but Reiner explains that they are undergoing some special training. Lilia doesn't buy her story because it just looks like she is using Arl to relieve stress. But Arl suddenly gets back to his feet and announces that he is going out for lunch because he is hungry. A few days later, the guild competition day arrives and the trio heads to the Colosseum. Harrell isn't too impressed by the people lining up to take part in the competition. Lilia overhears some spectators choosing the Black Blade Guild to win the match against them, and she gets pissed. She starts to approach them so she can give them a piece of her mind, but Reiner stops her. Arl is surprised to learn that people can bet on their matches. Lilia reveals that the odds of their match are 1 to 20 in favor of the Black Blade, which means that nobody expects them to win. However, she sees it as a grand opportunity to become a billionaire. She reveals that she took another loan with the guild house as collateral and bet everything on them to win their match against the Black Blade. Reiner isn't too happy with her plan, because they will be in a worse situation if they lose, but Lilia points out that they will be in a bad situation if they lose. So it's better to go out with a blaze of glory. Georg, the boss of Black Blade, suddenly approaches her and mocks her for wasting her time trying to uphold her father's guild. Georg is curious because he heard that she recruited a classless swordsman. Lilia wonders if he only approached her to gloat, but Georg reveals that he only came over to cheer her on because he feels bad about the current state of her guild. He reveals that he did her a favor by using his influence to make sure their guilds were matched up against each other. He explains that he is allowing them to get back in the spotlight and get some serious paycheck if they somehow manage to defeat the A-rank swordsmen he has chosen to face off against them. Georg begins to laugh at their ridiculous odds of pulling off a victory, but Lilia insists that they will win. Georg decides to indulge in her delusions and wishes her the best of luck as he walks away. Arl and Reiner see through Georg's fake kindness because it is obvious he is doing everything to eliminate their guild. Everyone enters the Colosseum and takes their seats as the announcer declares the start of the tournament, with the match between the Black Blade and Dragon Fang. Arel, Reiner, and Lilia stand in the middle of the Colosseum grounds, as the Colosseum screen displays the names of the fighters from the Black Blade. Arel notes that Georg isn't on the list, so he concludes that they are holding back against them, but Reiner clarifies that they are using a more aggressive lineup because Georg isn't one of the 5 strongest swordsmen in the guild. Arl is eager to get the battle started because he wants to pick up some new, interesting skills from their opponents. Lilia warns him to take the match seriously because the fate of their guild rests on it. But Arl points out that she is in no position to give him advice because she bet all their money on the match without consulting them first. The sister announces the first matchup will be between Gio and Errol. Everyone is surprised that Errol is classless. They write him off as a joke who has a death wish. Gio is pissed off because he finds it insulting that he is facing off against a classless loser, despite being an A-rank adventurer. He would rather have fun with the ladies, but the match kicks off and Gio strikes immediately. He uses a blink dash to close the distance and thrusts his sword into Orel. Lilia warns him to be more careful, but Reiner points out that he is unharmed. Errol's shadow disintegrates, and Gio figures out he is using his shadow skill. He strikes at Orel behind him, but it turns out to be a shadow. 3 arrows surround Gio, and he assumes one of them is the real one, because it is impossible to create 3 shadow images. He tries to find the real one, but they begin attacking him. He fends off their attacks, but the real Arel attacks him from behind. Gio can't believe what just happened to him as he loses consciousness, but Arel reveals that he learned the skill from Farah, who can make up to 5 after images. The sister declares Arel the winner, and the crowd erupts in a cheer. But they can't believe that Arel is really a classless swordsman. Lilia and Reiner are impressed with Arel's performance, but Arel is more interested in getting back to training as quickly as possible, so he can imitate Gio's thrust sword strike. He looks forward to the next matchup so he can pick up more skills. The next contender steps up and the match begins. The swordsman tries to attack Errol, but he blocks his attacks easily. He counters with his twin blade strike to knock out the swordsman. The next contender steps up and feints with his dagger while attacking with a kick. Arel uses his shadow skill to sneak behind him and knock him out with one strike. Lilia cheers Arel on so he can take out the last 2 members of the Black Blade. Reiner scolds her for leaving everything to him, but she admits that Arel is the only one among them who can take out the A-rank swordsman. So, she is giving emotional support. Shield steps up as the next contender and the fight begins. He scolds Arel for lying about his class, but Arel insists that he wasn't lying. He attacks Shield, but his attack barely does any damage because of his high magic protection. He decides to wear it out with persistent attacks, but Shield scolds him for complaining when he shouldn't even be a match against him. Errol reveals that he earned his place in that duel by putting in tremendous effort, but Shield insists that effort can't outweigh talent. He attacks Orel with a sword feint and uses his shield bash, but Orel sees through his feint and knocks the shield out of his hands. Now that Shield is exposed, Orel is confident he can win the match. He imitates the kick used by one of the swordsmen he fought against, and Shield points out that he has seen that technique before. Errol admits that he can pick up some skills after observing them once. He walks over to Shield's shield and picks it up. Errol's arrogance pisses Shield off so much that he attacks him, but he parries his strike. Errol uses his shadow skill and imitates Shield's shield bash technique to knock him down. The sister announces him as the winner, but the spectators begin to protest. They label Errol as a fraud because they can't comprehend how a classless swordsman took down 4 rank swordsmen in a row in record time. The sister consoles the crowd and reveals that the tournament administrators have ordered Errol's class ID to be publicly displayed so they can see his information for themselves. The sister consults with Arl to confirm that he is fine with the decision, and he agrees. The sister displays Arl's information on the Coliseum screens and announces that Arl is a certified classless swordsman. This wins back the favor of the crowd for Arl, and they begin to cheer for him. Lilia scolds Reiner for withholding the information about Arl's true strength because she would have taken a higher loan to bet on their victory. Reiner confesses that she didn't know he was strong enough to progress this far into the matchup without their help. Lilia reveals that she is going to start making preparations for a marriage certificate because she wants to tie Arl down as her limitless gold factory. The sister announces that the last contender is Masamune, who is a master samurai. He takes the stage, and Ariel immediately notes that he possesses a katana instead of the common broadsword. Reiner and Lilia are surprised by Masamune's appearance because they have never heard of him. They realize he is their trump card, and they hope Ariel can match his abilities. The sister announces the start of the battle, and Masano gets into his sword stance. Arl feels the threat from his stance, so he decides to keep his distance. Masano commends him for seeing through his plan of luring him in and using his ultimate skill to defeat him. Arl begins to approach him, and Masamune can't understand why he is making such a senseless decision, despite hearing his plans. Arl reveals that he has no choice but to move because they will remain in a stalemate otherwise. Arl also reveals that he is curious about Masamune's ultimate skill, but Masamune warns him that his curiosity could be his downfall. Arl keeps approaching him as he tries to come up with a plan. He considers using his shadow strikes, but he figures out that Masamune will see through it because he is quite perceptive. He stops at the edge of his sword range and concludes that he has to be faster than his strike. He steps into Masamune's range and he strikes, but Arl disappears. Masamune is surprised because he is certain Arl didn't use an afterimage, which means he was faster than his sword strike. Arl appears behind him and commends him for being fast, but he points out that he was trained by someone faster. He uses Piercing Tempest to defeat him, and Lilia is surprised to see that he has mastered the Sword Princess technique. The sister announces Arl as the winner, and he walks off the stage. Lilia and Reiner congratulate him on his victory, but Georg silently plots his revenge from the shadows. Late at night, Dragonfang celebrates their victory with a toast. Lilia enjoys her drink, saying nothing beats celebrating after winning. Arl notes in surprise she's old enough to drink. While Reiner holds juice and accepts her situation, Lilia moves closer to Arl and boldly asks him to marry her. He refuses without hesitation. She teases him for being shy, but he insists he isn't. She continues, saying she can fulfill his desires, but Arl replies he'd rather marry someone like Reiner. Lilia is shocked, and Reiner blushes, flustered. Embarrassed, she snaps that he should have at least lied instead of rejecting Lilia so plainly. Arl calmly asks why she thinks he's lying. Reiner stammers that people say she acts like a man since all she does is train. Arl admits he once thought the same, making her sigh about lacking feminine charm, but Arl disagrees. Reiner says she aims to be the strongest swordsman and has no time for femininity. Lilia smirks. Reiner doesn't know how to use her greatest weapon, so she's no competition. Lilia tries again, offering to help Errol relax with a massage while patting his lap. Reiner blushes and calls her indecent, but Lilia pretends innocence. Errol then says he'd rather get a massage from Reiner instead, stunning both girls. Later, Reiner spars with Errol. Her attack, even with a sheathed sword, leaves him gasping. She jokes this feels like torture, but Errol explains pushing his body to the brink is the only way to master guts. He needs a capable, trustworthy partner. Reiner feels flattered he trusts her so much. A man walks downstairs with Lilia, telling them to keep it down. He's Lilia's father. He asks Arl if he's training from frustration after losing, but Lilia corrects him. They won against Blackblade. Her father seems unimpressed, assuming the enemy sent weak members. Lilia insists all opponents were a rank, and Arl defeated them alone. Her father looks at Arl, covered in sweat and bruises, doubting he's that strong. Lilia adds they earned enough money to cover guild expenses thanks to Arl. Her father warns that bigger guilds will recruit him, leaving them behind. Lilia refuses to believe it and announces she and Arl will marry. Arl immediately denies it. Her father tells her to give up. Arl speaks up, saying even though Lilia can be silly, she's better than people who give up without trying. He asks when her father will stop moping and act his age. He can still wield a sword with one arm. Her father snaps. He grabs Arl by the collar, asking what he knows. A dual swordsman who can't wield both swords has nothing but useless skills. Arl admits he's right. He has no class or special skills either. Her father shoves Ale away and walks off. Arl comments that even with his injuries, Rod is incredibly strong and it's a waste to give up. Lilia feels thankful, believing Errol's words might inspire her father. Reiner agrees Rod just needs to find his passion again. Errol hopes Rod will teach him someday. Lilia suggests Arl explore a dungeon to learn new skills. Arl asks what a dungeon is, making Reiner sigh. She explains there's a massive dungeon beneath the city, filled with traps and monsters. Arl grows excited. Reiner agrees to join for combat experience before the Sword God Cup. When Arl asks what that is, Reiner groans. It's a grand tournament to decide the strongest swordsman. Lilia brings out an entry form saying she assumed he'd want to participate. Arl shocks them by tearing it in half. The paper is actually a marriage certificate. Ar puts Lilia in an arm lock as she yelps and apologizes. Meanwhile, two mysterious people watch through a magic orb. One asks where they're heading, the other answers the dungeon tomorrow. The first smirks. If an accident happens there, no one will suspect. A sinister laugh echoes. The next morning, Errol sleeps peacefully. Lilia sneaks in, smiling mischievously. She brags that her casual outfit will make him unable to resist. She leans closer for a wake-up kiss. Earl suddenly opens his eyes and asks what she's doing, startling her. Flustered, she tries playing it off, calling him hubby. She leans in again, but Earl pushes her face away. She yelps and accuses him of cruelty. Earl calls her a predator. Annoyed, Lilia argues she's throwing herself at him and calls him a dimwit. Earl ties her hands to the bed frame and leaves. He knocks on Reiner's door and finds her asleep, mumbling about her father and asking for praise. Amused, Errol pats her head, realizing she's a daddy's girl despite her tough exterior. Lilia's voice echoes, yelling to be untied. Rod walks in and sees his daughter tied to Errol's bed frame. Shocked, he starts arguing, while Errol listens awkwardly. Errol, Lilia, and Reiner arrive at the underground dungeon. Errol is surprised by how crowded it is. Reiner explains the Sword God Cup is approaching, and many adventurers are training. A long line waits for the teleportation seal. Lilia explains it lets people instantly travel to floors they've already visited. However, it only works for floors reached before. Lilia can go to the 12th floor while Reiner can reach the 14th. Ariel assumes he can follow Reiner, but Lilia corrects him. The magic won't allow it until he physically reaches that floor. Lilia insists on taking Errol herself and tells Reiner to go alone. Before Reiner can argue, Lilia grabs Errol's arm. Errol stops her, saying Reiner should come too, and she gladly agrees. Inside, they encounter two living armor monsters. The creatures move on their own, clanking heavily. Arl and Reiner draw swords. One charges at Arl. He blocks its strike, but another attack comes from behind. Arl jumps back, surprised at its speed despite heavy armor. He decapitates it, but even without a head, it continues moving. Reiner battles the second monster and explains, living armors are empty suits powered by dungeon magic. They feel no pain and have no weak spots. Errol targets the legs, sending it crashing down. Reiner finishes her fight and warns the enemies will regenerate soon. Errol realizes they're perfect for endless practice. Lilia steps in, pretending the fight was tough, though Errol points out she didn't help. Curious, Errol asks her class. She proudly says she's a fencer and offers to teach him. Errol says his mother, the Sword Princess, is already a master fencer. Lilia is shocked but recovers, claiming she can teach him compassion. They walk away and hear screams asking for help. They notice an injured guy coming out and ask what just happened. The guy reveals he entered a new room for the first time and got hit by a bad trap. Lilia thinks that's common inside a dungeon, but Arl is a bit confused. Ray wants to take the guy to the exit, but he refuses because his friends are still in the room. He begs the group to help them, which Reyna quickly agrees to. Lilia calls her out because that's a dumb decision without proper thought. Ray then realizes the guy is only covered in blood because his divine protection ran out, so he shouldn't be coming with them. However, Lilia explains that's the wrong approach, because they should be negotiating first. Her eyes shine as she explains they need to be compensated for helping someone. Everyone, including Arel, is shocked because Lilia is a hypocrite. 1 minute ago, she promised to teach him compassion, and now she's become the opposite. Lilia doesn't back down and claims it's everyone for themselves inside the dungeon. So, you should pay a price if you ask for help. Despite the shock, the injured dude pulls out the 200 IQ move of inflating her ego. She gets excited because she is finally getting recognized, and the guy reveals he read the article talking trash about her guild. Lilia gets mad and decides to leave the guy behind, but they manage to reach an agreement in exchange for him losing all his money. However, Arl believes the situation is kind of sketchy. Lilia doesn't understand because the guy gave her real money, but Arl says the guy is weird. He thinks there's too much blood on him, but Reyna tries to explain it's because his divine protection ran out. The girls ignore Are's worries and decide to follow the guy into the room. On their way, Are thinks this is getting weirder because he also lost as much blood as this guy before, but he couldn't even stand before receiving any type of healing. Yet this guy is walking just fine. He knows this guy's injuries are fake, but decides to let everything play out because it could be fun. They finally reach the room entrance, and the guy activates the secret door. They look around, but can't find anyone inside. They walk further in and notice a huge pool of blood. Lilia notices a gold coin next to the blood and decides to pick it up. But once she does, a magic circle activates. Ariel and Raina realize this is a teleport trap, and the injured guy mocks Lilia, claiming she's just as greedy as the rumors say. He thinks his job is done, but the magic circle increases in size, shocking him because he's now in range. In the end, everyone gets teleported to another place, which Raina believes to be lower than the 14th floor. Lilia wants the injured guy to explain what he just did, but they're startled when a light appears in front of them. The guy then explains he received orders to lead them to the trap so that they could never escape from it. Suddenly, a knight appears, and the guy reveals they're in the lowest floor where the advanced level sword gods lie. Lilia is shocked because that sword god class was supposed to be just a myth. Suddenly, Errol pushes her head down a second before the knight releases an attack aimed at their necks. The girls don't understand what attack that is, but Errol explains that's a slashing attack skill only sword gods can use. The girls are shocked by its huge range, but they don't have time to play around. The knight teleports and focuses his attack on Errol, pushing him against the wall. Errol blocked the attack and thinks it was worth getting guts because he barely lost any divine protection. He tries to attack the knight, but it teleports away. Arel confirms the knight's skills are of an advanced sword god and thinks this is the perfect chance to test himself. Everyone is confused by his words, but Arel simply dashes away and begins attacking. His speed and attacks shock everyone, including the knight, who is forced to focus on defending. But suddenly the knight uses a skill to increase the pressure and force everyone to their knees. Arel is the only one who's still standing because he already practiced this with his mother. He remembers when she was training him and complimented that he managed to still stand at that time. He told her he could drop to his knees at any moment, but his mother didn't care. She simply explained that once he used this skill, he should hit his opponent with the infinite break 1. Arel was shocked, because that meant his mother would hit him with a high-speed chopping attack. He thinks that is too much, because it would be impossible for him to block it since he can barely stand. But she doesn't care. She simply claims she will go easy on him, and despite his claims that she can't control her strength, she simply attacked, saying that she could maybe control it this time. Despite being harsh at that time, Arel is glad she never went easy on him. He picks up a coin from the floor and throws it at the knight, forcing him to break his stance by cutting it in half. Arel uses this chance to jump forward, claiming the knight made a mistake, thinking he couldn't move. In the next second, he unleashes his infinite break skill to defeat the knight. Lilia obviously tries to leech off him by calling him her future husband, but Arel refuses. After the fight, Errol drinks a mana potion and Reyna asks how he knows the sword god's skills. Lilia is also confused because she has never seen a sword god despite living in that city for her whole life, yet simply explains that's an easy answer. His mother is an actual sword god. The girls think he's joking, and Reyna asks why his mother always claimed to be a sword princess. That's when Ariel reveals she simply doesn't like to get attention. Rhea laughs it out and claims that she would never have challenged him if she knew his mother was a sword god. Ariel reveals he's glad she didn't know about it because he really needed their fight to improve himself. Lilia can't stand this anymore and wants to find an exit, when suddenly another light appears. Ariel gets excited because it could be a new enemy, but Lilia reveals it's the teleportation spell, and they decide to leave. Meanwhile, in the city, Lilia's father is at the bar when he listens to a group bragging about making so much money by catching some idiots in a teleportation trap. The group feels bad because their other member also got caught by the trap, but they begin to laugh it out. Turns out they knew he would get caught, but never told him just to get a bigger share. One of the guys then mentions, "This is a crazy ending to the Dragonfang Guild." Upon hearing this, Lilia's father asks to hear more about this, and they realize he was their old guild leader. He begins throwing a tantrum, but a guy named Georg stops him. Rod thinks Georg is behind this, and the guy reveals that his guild members saw Lilia's party entering a dangerous hidden room in the dungeon. Rod tries to grab him while shouting that not only did he take his arm, but he's also trying to take his daughter away. He falls to his knees while calling her name, when suddenly Lilia and the group enter the bar. Georg thinks this is impossible, but Lilia simply claims they almost died because of him. However, they manage to defeat the sword god and come back alive. Georg claims they aren't strong enough to defeat a sword god, but Arl claims he was a decent opponent. Lilia also reveals the other guy confessed that Georg was the person behind it. Georg leaves because he knows nothing can be done about what he did and gets home. He's angry because he thought he would finally become the strongest adventurer now that Errol's mother and Rod were out of the picture. But he's now competing with a classless kid that can defeat superclasses. Suddenly, a dark fog appears, and Georg notices a sword behind him, emanating aura. And with this, today's episode ends. Wait for us in future episodes of this wonderful anime. But before that, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate the bell button to receive everything new. We also hope that those who followed us to the end of this episode will tell us where they are watching us from. Back at the Dragonfang Guild, Lilia learns that the preliminary brackets for the Sword King tournament have been posted. But the problem is, she and Arl are placed in the same group, meaning she'll have to face him. Even if she doesn't, it's crystal clear to her that Arl is the only one who is going to pass from that group. Arl overhears her frowning, but he ignores her completely and asks Reiner instead about the tournament's details. Reiner explains that the Sword King tournament is so famous that every year thousands of people from around the country come to participate, and that's why there's a preliminary bracket to cut down the number of players before the knockout rounds. Lilia once again frowns, stating her dreams of winning the tourney are squashed again. Arl this time rubs salt in her wounds, telling her that a loser at her level should feel proud that she somehow managed to get selected for the preliminaries in the first place. He then continues to ignore her once again and asks Reiner about the group she's in. Reiner checks the list but doesn't know any of her opponents. Regardless, she's determined to pass the preliminaries. Lilia also tries to act motivated and wants to practice in the dungeon, but neither Reiner nor Arl wants to tag along with her. Lilia's father, Rod, enters the room and warns Lilia to be careful after hearing her plan, as he's certain that Georg is going to set up another trap. Lilia promises she'll be fine and heads off alone. Seeing his daughter being so fearless makes Rod want to pull his act together once again, so he decides to quit drinking and try to replenish his status as a master swordsman. Later at the tournament grounds, the preliminaries begin, and Lilia, as expected, loses her other battles miserably without even facing Arl. He approaches her and she instantly realizes that he just wants to mock her with insults. In any case, she tells him to be careful, as there are people with some very unique skills in this tournament. She points at a red-hailed swordsman, telling him to be wary of her, but Arl doesn't care, as he's totally aware of how strong he is. But Lilia still thinks he should put his guard up, mentioning that the red-hanged girl is from the magic swordsman class, and is able to use both magic spells and apply them to her sword. This might actually be troublesome, so Arl thanks Lilia for the heads up. Shortly after, he faces the red-hanged girl, who immediately taunts him for being classless. Arl doesn't care though, and tells the announcer to begin their battle. As the duel begins, the red-hanged girl starts spamming fireball spells at Arl, but he dodges all of the incoming attacks easily. He takes a careless stance and points out how she isn't very skilled at either magic or swordsmanship. A jack of all trades can never be a master of anything, and Arl is a master swordsman, so he isn't worried about losing at all. The girl refuses to be humiliated like that, so she activates her signature skill, Flame Sword, and then begins swinging her sword, which acts like a fire whip. These movements would make it difficult for a regular swordsman to defend himself. However, Arl easily counters her move, swinging his blade so hard that the airwaves cause the flame on the girl's sword to extinguish. He then uses Blink Dash, getting behind her in the blink of an eye, and knocks her out with one clean hit from the back of his sword. By defeating her, he becomes the winner of his group and passes the preliminaries with flying colors. The main event happens a couple of days later, and Lilia is about to leave when she notices that her dad is pretending to sleep on the couch. She tries emotionally blackmailing her dad to come with her to watch Arl's battle, but he refuses. She suspects that her father is scared of running into Georg there, but her dad makes it clear that this is not the case. He explains that the reason he's upset is because the day before, he tried practicing with a sword again, and swinging it made him realize that his skills are so rusty. A man like him who was once at the level of a sword king cannot win a tournament held for youngsters. Lilia cannot believe how much ego this man has, and tries to tell him that there are many people in the world who cannot even get into the main tournament, and by many people she means herself. Obviously, Rod realizes that, so for his daughter's sake, he agrees to go with her. As they are walking through the streets, Lilia tells Rod that she knows he definitely would have gone to the tournament in secret to watch both Arl and Reiner's fights, as he cares deeply for all of his guild members. Rod smiles and pats his daughter's head, feeling glad that she knows him so well. The main tournament is about to start and everyone is tense. You can rightly assume that even Reiner, despite how confident she looks on good days, is scared. She sits in fear and shakes her legs. Arl sees her from a distance and comes to her. Since she is absent-minded, she doesn't notice that he is nearby, so it's as if he bumped into her. She screams and asks him not to scare her. He rightly assumes something is wrong as he hasn't seen her that tense before. Well, not everyone can be a classless genius like Arl. Normal people have reasons to be scared about competitions like that. It's the main tournament, and the biggest stage she has ever been on in her life. Also, for that tournament, you don't know who you might be paired against, and that is a worry. He reassures her that she will be fine, and she comments that she thought about the idea of being paired against him and how it would feel. Soon, the competition starts, and the first person to fight is Georg. Shockingly, his opponent is none other than Arl. When Arl's name is called, Reiner gets emotional and holds his hands. He stops and asks what is wrong, but she claims it was a mistake. She wishes him the best in the match and sends him off. He arrives on the field to fight Georg, and as you can guess, Lilia cheers him on from afar, urging him to beat the pride out of Georg. However, by the time Georg comes out, the atmosphere changes. He has a horn on his forehead. His two side teeth pierce outside his lips. He looks just like a demon. Sorry, mistake. He is a demon. Everyone wonders why his appearance suddenly changed. Thankfully, Rod recognizes the demon that has possessed Georg. Rod knows how deadly that demon and its sword are. So, he screams to Arl, warning him not to fight or go near the sword. When the demon hears Rod's scream, he gets an overflow of emotions because it means someone in that generation recognizes him. He thought he had been long forgotten, and this just makes him excited. Georg speaks as if he doesn't recognize Arl, and this shocks Lilia, so she looks to her father for answers. Rod informs her that that sword is the one used by the legendary Sword King to slay the ancient demon. The sword has been said to be filled with grudges, which is why it was locked away. However, it seems Georg has requested the help of the sword and has been possessed by the demon. The demon figures everyone is now talking about him. Soon, people start commenting about how the demon had destroyed an entire city in the blink of an eye and how powerful it is. As expected, everyone starts running out of the hall for safety. This only feels like fun for the demon who has been bored for a long while. He introduces himself as Durgala, bragging that he will show them why he is the legendary demon. He hits the sword on the ground and creates a shield. He locks everyone inside the arena so no one can escape and laughs erratically. To his shock, there is someone in front of him ready to fight. That person is Arl. He calls Arl a fool and asks if he wants to die, but Arl is of the opinion that the only reason he is there is because he can defeat him. Arl reminds him that he was beaten by the Sword King of legend, and that just means he isn't invincible. Durgala claims that he has Georg's memory, and he knows that the Sword King is long gone, so there is no one that can defeat him now. Well, he is wrong. The Sword King isn't gone, but that is all Arl can tell him at that point. Arl also tells him that he has the skills to defeat him. You can't doubt him, since his mother is the Sword King and he had gotten his skills from her. Without wasting time, he goes to fight. He uses the King's Step to attack Durgala. This shocks Durgala because that is a skill exclusive to the Sword King alone. Since he knows the clashless boy can't be the Sword King, he reminds Arl that he is in the body of the Sword Emperor and has Georg's skills. He jumps and attacks Arl so much that Arl bounces hard on the ground. He assumes that he has won, but Arl stands up. Thankfully, he had gotten the gut skill from all the painful training he had been doing with Reiner. Since Durgala means business, Arl also gets serious. He uses his infinite break to attack Durgala several times until he lands his final hit, and Durgala falls hard on the floor. He goes nearer and people caution him to stop, but he reveals that since Durgala doesn't have any special resilience, he can't stand up again. Everyone shouts in joy that the fearful time is over, and Reiner walks to Arl to check on him. Unknown to them, Durgala isn't Georg himself, but the sword. Although Georg is physically weak, the sword isn't, so Durgala considers how he will survive. All he has to do is find someone else to possess in that place, and find a good way to run. He looks around for a person with a physique good enough for him, and he finds Rod. The sword disappears from Georg's body and flies toward Rod. Arl protects Reiner as the sword flies, and Rod tries to protect Lilia. Unfortunately, the sword possesses him, and Durgala holds Lilia as a hostage. Arl comments that he didn't know the sword was the demon, and now that he knows, he will destroy the sword. Durgala claims he will kill Lilia if Arl comes nearer, but Arl doesn't care. So Durgala is forced to remind Arl that Lilia is his future wife, and he won't want her to die. Arl laughs. He doesn't even like her that much. Unable to believe the truth, Durgala reveals that he saw in Rod's memory that Lilia informed him about her relationship with Arl. Well, Durgala doesn't know that Lilia was just daydreaming. Arl reveals he doesn't care about Lilia, and he could just kill Lilia and Durgala together. This hurts Lilia, but her safety is the first priority here. Arl informs her to stay calm, as Durgala can't do her any harm. To their shock, he is right. Rod has been fighting Durgala's spirit, which is why Rod hasn't turned into a demon. Rod takes control of his body and fights back, claiming that if Durgala had approached him some days ago with the opportunity of becoming a demon, he would have taken it. But now his spirit is strong. He has met Arl, and now he believes that anyone can capture the life and future they want, so he will fight. He successfully gets himself free from Durgala's grasp and throws the sword at Arl, who crushes it immediately. That is the final end of Durgala, and everyone in the city is excited. In my opinion, the tournament should end, and Arl should be declared the winner, since that was the greatest fight in that tournament. What do you think? A few days later, Rod yells at a group of kids and completely destroys them during training because they lack skill and swordsmanship and depend only on their abilities to fight. When he tells them to come at him again, all of them run away, and Lilia scolds Deal for chickening out on his promise to join her guild and work hard to get stronger. The boy argues that her dad's training is way too brutal, and Lilia agrees that her dad got back in shape thanks to Arel. When Deal asks where is, she laughs awkwardly and admits that Arel sort of left the guild out of nowhere. She suddenly starts crying, wondering why he would quit and leave her all alone, and the guild is now in a tough spot, since Reiner also quit right after him. On his way home, the driver asks Arel if he is really fine with leaving the city right after winning the title of champion swordsman. But Arel replies that he already saw everything he needed to, and now wants to test his skills back at home. Ara explains he wants to see if he can actually win against his mom, which makes the driver burst out laughing, as even the champion swordsman is scared of his own mother. Back in his hometown, Farah instantly senses he is standing behind her, even though he erased his presence. She compliments him since she only noticed him a few seconds later than usual, and she is delighted to hear that he won the tournament just like she once did. Suddenly, she closes the distance in an instant and brings the rose up to his face, asking if it smells nice. Arel realizes the fight would have been over if that rose were a sword, and he admits his mom saw right through his plan. She tells him that the garden would be destroyed if they sparred there, so they move to the mountains where he used to train. Farah is excited to see how much he has improved, and he taunts her that she will not be smiling for long. With that, Farah uses Divine Step to close in, and he barely manages to block her attack with his sword because he saw that move earlier in the garden. He jumps back and uses a new skill on her, which amazes her because he combined Divine Slash with Air Slide. When he asks what skill she used though, Farah simply replies she was just swinging her sword like normal, and claims she learned how to fight without depending on skills from him. Hearing that, Aurel is amazed by her strength and goes all out, creating so much noise that all the townspeople get scared by the monstrous sounds coming from the mountains. The battle rages on as Aurel uses Air Leap to reach Farah, and when she tries to blow him away with Divine Presence, he uses the same skill to counter her force. After they both land, she warns him that she will not hold back on her next attack. And the two finally cross swords using the Swordmaster's ultimate skill. Meanwhile at Aurel's house, Reiner hopes home and knocks on the door. When his sister Mira opens it and asks who she is, Reiner politely explains that she came to meet her brother. The cheeky little girl calls Reiner a cow, and says her brother has no interest in talking to cowgirls. Just as Aurel's sister shouts insults and tries to shut the door on her, Farah suddenly appears and tells her not to be rude to their guest. Mira jumps excitedly into her brother's arms, and asks why the two look like a total mess, and their mom proudly reveals they sparred against each other, with Aurel actually managing to beat her this time. Still, Aurel admits he only won because his stamina lasted a little longer than his mom's. Ryder is amazed because he beat the Sword Princess, but Aurel admits he is not that proud, since his mom is not as strong as she was at her peak anymore. Hearing that, Farah gets annoyed because she insists she is still a young lady, and then asks her son to introduce the beautiful girl who came to see him. They head inside, where Farah says she is more curious about Aurel's romance with the cute girl than his little tournament win, which really gets his sister angry. Aurel introduces her as Reiner and explains they live together in the city, instantly making his mom's face light up with wrong ideas. After Reiner panics and quickly explains that they were only guildmates and nothing else, he asks her why she came, and she scolds him for rudely quitting the guild out of nowhere without even a word. Ariel bluntly says he filled the withdrawal form properly, but she gets angry because he should have at least said goodbye in person. When he says there was no point since he already learned all the skills he needed, Reiner sighs deeply and gives up hope. Hearing that, Fa warmly invites Reiner to rest in their peaceful village, since she came such a long way to see her hopeless son. But Reiner explains this is her hometown too, and her real reason for coming was not to meet Ariel, but to become Farah's apprentice. Just then, Reiner's father, Evan, urgently knocks on the door to report a strange disturbance in the nearby mountains. He requests the Sword Princess to protect the village security team, who are going to investigate what kind of monster cut down all the trees in the area. Hearing that, she assures him she already handled the monster, which puts him completely at ease. Then, Evan notices his daughter there, and Errol's mom is delighted to learn she is his child, saying she looks exactly like her late mother. When her father asks why Reiner is at Farah's house, she blurts out that she came for training, to be the perfect wife, which instantly brings her father to tears. Ryder blushes hard and swears she came to train in swordsmanship. So Arl's mom happily suggests she can do both bridal and sword training together, which makes Evan truly happy because he promised his wife he would take care of Reiner until she becomes a fully grown adult. Farah swears she will raise Reiner to be the perfect wife. And while Reiner desperately asks if anyone is even listening to what she wants, her father completely ignores her and wishes her good luck instead. After that, Arl goes into his father's room where he is studying magic again. His dad warmly welcomes him home and shares that he is nearly finished working on a spell similar to his killing strike. Putting that aside, his dad asks if Mireille was throwing a tantrum because he brought a cute girl home, but Arl says she is more hot than cute. That gets his dad even more excited because he never thought Arl could actually bring a girl home. However, Arl suddenly tells him with a serious face that he finally beat his mother in a match and now he wants to learn magic. But his father instantly tells him to forget about it because it is impossible for him. Meanwhile, downstairs, Reiner tries to cut a vegetable for the first time in her life and ends up smashing the entire table, even slicing Myra's favorite mug clean in half. Seeing that, Fa realizes Reiner never really cooked back at her guild, and when Reiner insists she is fine with only learning swordsmanship, Ferris sternly teaches her that a master swordsman must first master things in daily life. When Ariel's mother says she is glad to have another daughter in the house, Reiner curiously asks about his older sister. Mira explains that their sister was always worried about Ariel and left on a journey to create a world where classless bums could live freely, but Reiner laughs and says the Mad Lab probably will not be needing that anymore. In the kitchen, while Ariel and his dad get ready to fix the damaged table, his dad suddenly remembers that Ariel wanted to see magic, so he shows it in action on Mira's broken mug. Later, his dad repeats that Ariel should forget about learning magic because it requires a special aptitude only some people have, and he has never seen anyone without magic energy or skills use it successfully before. Ariel notices his dad did not actually say it was impossible, and his dad admits that Ariel did win the Swordmaster tournament with no class and got strong at an insane rate thanks to sheer hard work, but sometimes effort alone just is not enough. With that said, his dad picks up one of Ariel's broken training swords and explains that using magic without mana is like trying to use a sword without hands. Hearing that, asks how his dad can be so sure he has no aptitude, so his old man explains that the blessing grants anyone with Man of the Sorcerer class. Even then, Orul insists he has felt traces of magic before, especially during the times when Reiner used to beat him daily at the guild, which makes his father slightly worry about what kind of relationship they really had. Arel recalls how he used to drink a ridiculous amount of holy water to restore his divine protection, but Lilia got angry at the costs and told him to finish the old potions from their warehouse first. Even though Reiner was seriously concerned about what those mysterious bottles were filled with, he chugged them down anyway, and instead of restoring his divine protection, he felt something else inside his body. Hearing that, his dad is thrilled that he might finally have some magical ability, and admits he was always jealous that he could not teach Aurorel the same way his wife could. After that, his dad asks him to imagine the power moving through his body and try to make it flow into his hand. Aurorel focuses as hard as he can and manifests a small orb of magical energy, which becomes undeniable proof that he has magic. However, he nearly faints right after since that tiny amount alone drains all of his mana. Seeing that, his dad explains that his mana is even less than a little kid. When Arl asks how he can possibly increase his capacity, his dad tells him the only way is to cast magic hundreds of times, just like training his muscles. Arl is glad to hear that since training endlessly happens to be his specialty, and he collapses from exhaustion. Seeing his never-give-up attitude, Aurorel's dad cries tears of joy because he has never been prouder of his son in his entire life. The next morning, Aurorel heads to the nearest store and spends all his tournament winnings to buy as many mana potions as he can carry. After that, he grinds his magic skills non-stop for the next 6 months, until he can finally maintain a fireball without fainting. His dad congratulates him for reaching the level of a beginner sorcerer, so Aurorel eagerly asks if that means he can start casting real spells now. Instead, his dad takes out a page filled with magical language and explains that he must learn the entire magical script to cast a spell. Normally, a sorcerer's skill automatically brings the spell structure into their mind, but since Aurorel has no class, he has to imagine the spell from scratch every single time. With that said, his dad suggests he should study at the Magic City Institute, but first, Aurorel will need to raise his level enough to even qualify for admission. At dinner, Mara says her mom's cooking tastes amazing as always, but she immediately starts complaining when she realizes Reiner actually made it. Our Rory loves the food too, and Farah proudly compliments Renair's huge improvement in both cooking and swordsmanship. Ariel's dad chimes in that he likes Renair too because she is pretty and hardworking, but not more than his beloved wife, of course. Seeing their warm family banter, Reiner quietly wonders if her own family might have been like this if her mother were still alive. To lighten the mood, Arl's dad casts a beautiful glowing spell to express his love for his wife, and watching that heartfelt display lights a new fire in Arl's heart to become a powerful sorcerer someday. But that's where this video ends. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching. I will see you next. After 3 years of intense housewife training, Rhiannon nervously presents Farah with a cup of tea. As she watches, Farah brings the cup to her mouth before praising her cooking. Relieved, Rhiannon thanks Farah for all her guidance these years. But suddenly, they hear Mira sobbing loudly. As she comes into the kitchen, crying, Mira reveals that Errol left the house with a letter in his bed. Rhiannon takes the letter and finds out that Errol left for the City of Magic with no other explanation. While Mira cries because her brother left to get milk, Rhiannon feels guilty since she has once done the same thing. Suddenly, Fa hugs her, warning her, "Don't leave them like your cold son." Rhiannon reassures her she won't dip, and Fa wonders why her children turned out like this. Soon the culprit comes into the room, lazily rubbing his eyes. Farah sighs, thinking it'll all be fine as long as her kids stay safe. Meanwhile, Aurol is in a carriage riding to the City of Magic. He asks the driver how long it will take and learns that they've got 3 more days to go. The driver asks Aurol why he's always jumping from one big city to another, and the passengers get interested in him as well. The kids ask if Aurol is headed to the School of Magic just like them, so Aurol nods. A boy named Kaido wonders why Aurol is applying at such an old age, and his friend Kufa assumes he's just trying the entrance exam again after failing it many times. She tells Kaido not to make Aurol feel bad, but Kaido tells her that she just roasted him for failing anyway. While the two of them start arguing, the other girl, Colette, tries to calm them down. In their rage, they ignore her completely, and Aurol notes that all 3 of them are wizards. Seeing their young age, he realizes that the kids must have just received their wizard class. Then Kaido tells Aurol that he uses red magic, then curiously asks what type of magic Aurol uses. Thinking about his skill, Aurol remembers learning from his father that magic is divided into colors based on the elements a wizard uses. However, because Aurol didn't receive a magic class for any specific color, Leo told him to try using all of the magic elements. Recalling his experience, Aurol tells the kids, "I'm a jack of all trades since I'm classless." Kufa laughs, since she thinks there's no way a classless can attend a magic school. Angered by his prank, Kaido tells Aurol to stop lying, but he tells him it's the truth. Finally, Aurol shows them his class card, which proves that he's classless. Seeing this, Kaido starts mocking Aurol for trying to learn magic without a class. Aurol sighs, having heard such taunts a billion times already. Suddenly, a creature roars loudly from the forest, startling the carriage horses. The kids get worried about the noise, so Aurol explains that it's the sound of a troll king. Terrified of the powerful beast, Kaido tells the rider to rush them out of the forest, but he tells him that the horses are too scared to move. Colette thinks that they're all going to die, but Kufa reminds her that trolls are just slow creatures. Kaido agrees, thinking that they can avoid its attacks to fight back. With her friend's encouragement, Colette nods and agrees to fight. Although the kids are ready to fight, they still gulp nervously as the Troll King approaches. The hideous monster shows its face, and Colette quickly clings to Kufa. Kaido reminds her to be brave, saying that it's not too big to handle. However, as the troll gets closer, suddenly a massive club knocks it into space. As the kids watch in horror, the real Troll King finally walks out, 10 times larger than the previous one. Finally, all of the young magicians give up any hope of survival. The girls wonder if they can try doing anything with magic, but Kaido quietly steps out of the carriage, trembling with fear. He pulls out his wand, determined to fight to the death. After channeling all of his mana into the wand, Kaido unleashes a powerful fireball at the Troll King. As the blast explodes in the monster's face, the girls think it actually worked. However, it only roars in anger, ready to destroy the pesky kids. The girls realize that Kaido only made the troll even angrier, and he screams that he has already used up all his mana. The Troll King approaches the carriage to attack, but suddenly, a giant explosion spell vaporizes the monster. The kids wonder who defeated it. Meanwhile, Aurol pops out of the carriage, thinking that he went overboard with his mana. Kaido wonders if he was the one who cast the spell, and Kufa points out that explosion is a supreme-level red magic. Shocked, Kaido also recalls that only an advanced archmage can use an explosion. Then Aurol walks over to the horses and uses his healing magic. The horses stand back up, and the carriage driver thanks him. Aurol asks the driver to show his own skills next time, but he thinks it's too big a hassle. Nearby, Kaido apologizes to Aurol for his earlier rudeness, thinking he's a senior magic teacher, and says that from now on, he'll be his student. Aurol tries telling him he's just a classless mage, but the kids think he's hiding his true identity from them. Seeing them glaze him so hard, Aurol thinks he should have just used a sword to avoid suspicion. After everyone calms down, the carriage moves out again. 2 days later, they arrive at a floating island city. Pointing towards it, Kaido tells Aurol that it's the City of Magic. Surprised by the architecture, Aurol gets off the carriage with the kids. Kaido excitedly explains that the bridge connecting the island to the forest is also held up through magic. Watching their friend follow Aurol like a dog, Kufa wonders why Kaido adores him so much. She thinks that he might have used hypnosis magic to control Kaido. Hearing their doubts, Aurol feels annoyed that he causes suspicions everywhere he goes. As they enter the city, Kaido asks Aurol if he'll apply for the Red Magic School with him. This surprises Aurol, so Kaido explains that all schools are divided based on the color of their magic. Since every element has a different magical language for its spell chant, all the schools have different teachers and syllabi. Kufa reveals that she'll go to the blue school, while Colette feels nervous about applying to the green school. Realizing that he needs to take an entrance exam, Aurol prays that he doesn't get rejected, just like he did back in the City of Swords. After parting ways with the girls, Aurol and Kaido head over to the Red School of Magic. As Aurol hands over his entrance application, the receptionist asks if he entered all his information accurately. He wonders if she's asking him to check his class, thinking that she'll reject him because he's classless. However, she easily approves his application, which surprises Aurol. He asks why the school doesn't reject classless people, so the receptionist tells him they give a fair chance to everyone. With their application approved, Aurol walks to the examination area with Kaido. After a young man casts a fireball spell, the examiner calls another applicant. He walks up and proudly reveals he's already an advanced mage, shocking everyone with his talent. Aurol wonders if an advanced class is that big of a deal, so Kaido tells him they're basically guaranteed to have a successful career. Aurol nods, recalling that his father just ended up in the countryside with his exceptional talent. Kaido thinks that the boy is too arrogant, but Aurol reminds him that he isn't any better. Soon the boy burns the test dummy with an impressive eruption spell, leaving the audience stunned. Seeing everyone fawn over him, Kaido starts bragging about his master, which annoys the boy. Errol shuts Kaido's big mouth, making the boy think Errol is afraid of him. While the boy boasts about melting the metal dummy, Errol tells him to look at it again. As he turns around, he finds the dummy intact, much to his shock. The examiner explains that it's made out of powerful mithril, so ordinary attacks can't melt it. Once again, Kaido starts taunting the young mage for his overconfidence, but Errol shuts him up before leaving to attempt his own test. Standing in front of the durable mithril dummy, Errol thinks it's a good chance to go all out and test his abilities. As he charges his spell, the examiner gets surprised. Finally, Errol casts the eruption spell, which just looks like a thin needle pouring on the dummy. Seeing the spell's weak power, the boy starts laughing at Kaido for his boasting. However, the dummy suddenly melts into a puddle, stunning the young man. Since the eruption spell isn't strong enough to melt mithril, the boy accuses Errol of cheating. Errol explains that he condensed the flame into a smaller area to boost the intensity of its heat, which allowed him to melt the mithril. The boy can't believe that Errol is able to modify his magic. Errol starts walking away, and Kaido wonders where he's heading. Errol tells him that he plans to take the entrance exams at the other magic schools too. He soon arrives at the water school, where Kufa has just passed her test. She's surprised to see him there, so he tells her he'll attempt the exam just like her. Soon, it's Errol's turn to start, and he creates some tough icicle spikes that shatter the mithril dummy to bits. After destroying all of the applicants' hopes and dreams, he turns around to target the green school. There, Errol finds Colette nervously huddled in the corner and asks why she isn't taking her exam. She tells him she's too nervous to even register, saying that she needs moral support to try anything. Errol tells her she needs to take the exam on her own, so she asks how he handles his nervous when he's anxious. Confused, he replies that he has never felt nervous in his life, which leaves Colette shocked. Errol asks her why a person can feel nervous, so she tells him that it comes from the fear of failure. After thinking about her words, Errol asks Colette if she has never failed before. She nods, saying that she fails a lot, which is why she wants to avoid it. Saying that he has also failed many times, Errol wonders why she's scared of it. Colette doesn't understand his words, so he reminds her that even if a person fails sometimes, their life doesn't just end. His simple words stun Colette, and she finally believes that even if she fails, she can just try again later. After calming down, she thanks Aral for his help. He smiles and asks her how the Green School's exam works. Colette explains that in order to pass, applicants must make a windmill spin with their magic. With this in mind, Errol registers with her and enters the examination area. There he focuses his mind and unleashes a tornado spell at a windmill. As the rough winds shred the poor windmill to pieces, Errol realizes it wasn't made out of mithril. The examiner tells Errol he has passed and asks Colette to begin her test. She feels even more nervous taking the exam after Aral's insane show of skill, but he reminds her to calm down. Finally, Colette prepares to take her own test and passes it. While Errol leaves the venue, he heads over to the rest of the magic schools, passing all the exams with flying colors. In the end, Errol heads over to the Black School of Magic, surprised by its ruined building. While walking down the halls, he notices a strange creature in a box. Suddenly, a woman comes over to him asking, "Have you seen her pet Gui?" Errol points to the box, so she quickly takes a strange creature out of it. Happy to have her pet, she proudly brags to Errol that it's a chimera she made inside her lab. Suddenly, a skeleton welcomes Errol to her school, but he slashes off her head by instinct. Errol wonders if she's an undead monster, but the skeleton introduces herself as a normal person called Latelia. Errol wonders how she's walking around as a skeleton and asks how he can take the Black School's exam. Latelia explains that since nobody wants to learn black magic, they don't even take an exam. Although Errol is weirded out by their casual attitude, he decides to join anyway. Afterward, he heads back to the city, where Kaido and the girls call out to him. The kids rush to ask which school he'll attend, then immediately start arguing over who gets to claim him. Errol sighs and reveals that he plans to attend all of the schools at the same time. Kaido thinks attending 3 schools at once is already impossible, but Errol then reveals that he'll actually be attending all 6 magic schools in the city. As he counts down from red and blue to white, yellow, and black, the kids feel their world shattered by Errol's insane ambitions. Errol surprised everyone when he said he didn't plan to join just one school, but intended to enroll in all 6 magic schools at the same time. His friends stared at him in disbelief, completely shocked by his decision. Errol showed them the 6 acceptance letters he'd received, and Kova couldn't believe he'd managed to pull that off. She wondered how the other schools hadn't found out that he'd been accepted elsewhere. Errol explained that student information wasn't shared between schools, then started looking over each school's schedule, confident he could attend them all simultaneously with a bit of improvisation. But he suddenly changed his mind when he noticed that the schedules overlapped. Kaido reminded him that he'd warned him not to apply to 6 schools at once because it would be impossible to attend them all. Errol pointed out that attendance only counted for 20% of the total grade, and since most of the mark depended on exams, he was sure he'd manage just fine as long as he performed well on tests. Colette pointed out that he wouldn't pass the exams if he didn't attend classes, since the latest material taught right before tests wasn't in the books. Errol asked to borrow their notes to fix the problem, and they agreed. But Kova wondered what he'd do about the 3 other schools where he couldn't borrow notes. Errol explained that there was no need to worry about the Black Magic School, since no classes were held there because the Black Magic School relied on self-study that left him to focus on the Yellow and White Magic Schools. Kaido was impressed by his reasoning and suggested they all go to school together on their first day. Kova pulled Colette aside and asked how was planning to attend 2 schools at once, since she'd heard that managing just one properly was nearly impossible. Colette admitted that Ariel was a very mysterious person, not normal at all, and didn't act like ordinary people. Kaido called everyone over so they could go to their first class together. They entered the classroom and Kaido was so excited for his first day that he couldn't wait to sit down. Ariel led him toward the back, but Royce spotted them before they could take their seats. He recognized them right away, but they ignored him and kept walking. Royce shouted angrily at being ignored. That was when Kaido recognized him as the guy who'd failed the entrance exams. But Royce denied losing. He accused Ariel of being a fraud because it was impossible for a skilled wizard like him to lose to an ordinary spell user doing simple tricks. Ariel revealed that he wasn't a spell user, and then Royce understood why he'd lost. He assumed Ariel was a wizard and praised him for reaching that level at such a young age, even as a new student, denied being a wizard, which made Royce panic. The only other explanation was that Ariel was a great archmage, but Ariel denied that too, leaving Royce speechless and completely confused. The teacher entered the classroom and asked everyone to sit down to start the lesson. Royce immediately raised his hand wanting to ask a question. The teacher didn't recognize him, so Royce introduced himself and asked about Ariel's rank, since he was the only other person who had used the explosion spell during the exam. The teacher revealed that Ariel was unranked, and Ariel confirmed it. Royce was so shocked he couldn't even process what he was hearing. Kaido felt sorry for him since he himself had once been that ignorant and reassured him that he'd get used to it. They took their seats and the teacher announced the beginning of the lesson, telling them to open their books while he wrote some magic spell texts on the board. Kaido struggled to keep up because there were so many magical formulas to memorize. The spells themselves were already hard, but adding spelling and vocabulary to the mix made learning a real nightmare. Meanwhile, Ariel was surprised that they were starting with something so basic at the academy. He wondered why they were still studying from scratch, when experienced spell users already had the magical texts engraved in their minds. The teacher explained that quite a few of them hadn't fully memorized the spells or their rules yet. He said the only reason they could use magic without proper knowledge was their natural talent, but emphasized that full understanding of magical texts was necessary for smoother spellcasting. He added that mastering this would help them choose the best techniques for casting spells and managing magical energy efficiently, reducing physical strain on their bodies. That's when finally understood why the teacher put so much emphasis on it. The teacher also explained that at higher levels, they'd gain the ability to rearrange spells to create more complex forms of magic. Kaido asked if that's what Ariel had done during the exams, and Ariel admitted he hadn't realized that was considered an advanced technique. He explained that his father used to mix spells carelessly as if it were normal. After class, he went to the Green Magic School and met Colette. He told her that the classes at the other schools weren't offering anything new, but admitted that Green Magic School was fun, especially because of the upcoming practical training in flight magic. He confessed that he'd never tried anything like that before, which surprised Colette, since it was impossible to master advanced magic without learning something basic like flying. Ariel blamed his strange upbringing, saying his father was afraid of heights and had never taught him anything related to it. The instructor walked in and asked the students to split up before starting flight practice. She told them to imagine being gently lifted by a rising air current. She began floating and added that they could spread their arms and imagine being birds to help them master the technique. Ariel was at a loss because the instructor's method only worked if the spell was already ingrained in the user's mind. Ariel couldn't memorize the spell because he couldn't think about something he didn't know. Colette started hovering beside him, thrilled that she'd mastered the technique. Ariel tried to observe her method to copy it, but she lost her balance and fell. The other students laughed at her, and although Ariel almost felt he should comfort her, she brushed it off and got back up. She told them she no longer feared failure and resumed training. Ariel admired how quickly Colette was improving and starting to fly, convinced she'd achieve full flight with more practice, which motivated him to train too. He thought the best way to apply the instructor's guidance was to trigger a tornado spell beneath his feet. The spell launched him upward, but when the upward force ran out, he fell hard to the ground. Colette offered him her hand, and he took it gratefully. Then another student walked over, mocking them and saying they were a pathetic sight before showing off how well he could fly. He floated for a few seconds and then landed again. He told them that he'd been studying flight magic since becoming a wizard and had never lost a race before. Ariel didn't know what a race was, so Colette explained that it was a sport using flight magic, where people competed along a course to see who reached the finish line first. Ariel got excited about the idea and agreed to join, but the student reminded him that it was a flight sport and advised him to learn how to fly first. Ariel boasted that he'd master flying very soon. The student asked the instructor when the next race would be, and she told him it would be held in 2 months. The student told Ariel to forget about trying to join that one, since mastering flight would take at least 6 months. He gave Ariel an entire year to train and challenged him to next year's race, then flew off. But Ariel already had an idea for a spell combination that could mimic flight. Colette thought he was planning for next year, but he told her he'd join the upcoming race because he'd master flight in just 2 months. A few days later, Colette, Kova, and Kaido were walking through the halls of the Green Magic School. Kaido asked why Colette insisted on bringing them out at night when they were supposed to be asleep. She told them she'd forgotten something and wanted to retrieve it. She'd asked them to come along because she didn't want to get lost in the dark. Kaido understood, but pointed out it wasn't necessary to bring him specifically since they could have just gone together. Colette revealed that Kova insisted he come along for extra protection. Kova explained that it was safer to move as a group since there were rumors of ghosts appearing in the school after dark. Kaido started to panic, so Kova teased him, calling him the same scared little kid who used to be too afraid to go to the bathroom alone. Kaido got mad, accusing her of being a hypocrite for calling him a coward when she'd been hiding behind Colette since they arrived at school. Kova denied it, saying she was just making sure no one attacked Colette from behind. They bickered until Colette told them to stop, worried their noise would attract the ghost. They turned toward her and saw a ghost entering through the window behind her. The ghost opened the window and covered Colette's mouth so she wouldn't scream. Kaido threatened to burn him if he didn't let her go, so the ghost released her and asked them to calm down. Kaido recognized his voice and Daryl pulled down his hood to reveal his face. He asked what they were doing in the school courtyard, but they asked him the same thing. He said he'd been practicing flight magic since he'd decided to join the race. Kova realized he was the reason behind all the ghost rumors around campus, while Kaido worried that Aro was exhausting himself and not sleeping enough. Arel assured them he was getting plenty of rest and mentioned that he'd just been sleeping a moment ago. Kaido didn't understand what he meant, so Arel explained that he trained himself to practice while sleeping. Kova insisted that kind of sleep didn't count as real rest. Kaido admitted he'd never be as strong as Arel, but promised to start training himself too. Kova told him to overcome his fear of ghosts first, but Kaido denied being afraid of them. Silently, Kova and Colette both vowed to train on their own as well to get better at spellcasting. They left the school, said their goodbyes, and Aro wondered what to do next now that he was still awake. He visited Latalia and asked for permission to enter the library. She asked what he was looking for, and he told her he wasn't searching for any particular book, but wanted to read every book they didn't have at home since any of them might contain useful information for the future. Latalia offered him a job at the library since, unlike others, he didn't show discomfort when seeing books about black magic. The next day at the Red Magic School, the teacher is writing spell lines on the board when notices a mistake in one of them. Kaido praises him for catching it, and Ariel explains that he has to memorize all the spells because they don't come to him naturally. Kaido asks how he memorized them all, and Ariel says he created shorter versions of the long spells to help him remember them more easily. He declares that he can shorten the teacher's spell lines by a third, and the teacher overhears him. The teacher asks him to write his version on the board, and Ariel confidently steps forward. The teacher analyzes Ariel's spell and admits that it's theoretically correct, but points out that it lacks safety measures, meaning it would explode if it failed. Ariel explains that he doesn't need protection from the explosion because he has divine protection. The teacher tells him that divine protection doesn't prevent pain, but Ariel insists he can handle it as long as he won't die. Realizing that Ariel has full control over his spells, the teacher gives him a chance to take the promotion exam to move up to the second class. Royce asks to join the exam as well, and the teacher agrees. He takes them both to the training arena and announces the start of their promotion test. Ariel doesn't understand what he's supposed to do, so the teacher explains that once he enters the hallway, a door on the other side will open and release a monster. They must defeat the monster from a distance using magic and are warned not to get close since it might attack. When the teacher asks who will go first, Royce volunteers. He goes down the hall and the teacher signals for the gate to open. A minotaur emerges and attacks immediately. Royce tries to cast an explosion spell against it, but it's too slow to hit the moving target. Arel notices that Royce's spell is stronger than it was in the previous test, and the teacher confirms it's because of his recent studies. Royce tries again and again, but the monster dodges every time. The teacher remarks that the explosion spell isn't suited for a moving target, and that Royce's chances are low because he's panicking. The Minotaur reaches him and raises its arm to strike, but then suddenly disappears. Royce breathes a sigh of relief, but the teacher assures him that the school never allows students to be harmed. Royce leaves the hallway, and the teacher tells him he failed, but praises him for making it this far. Since most students study for 2 years before attempting the test, Royce realizes the teacher wanted to show him how much he still had to learn before calling himself a real wizard. He vows to continue studying magic humbly until he reaches that level. The teacher then calls Errol into the hallway for his turn, saying they've prepared a monster of the same type. When the gate is raised, a larger and darker Minotaur comes out. A guard rushes to inform the teacher, Bacchus, that they accidentally let a superior Minotaur into the arena. The powerful Minotaur attacks Arel, who casts 2 fire spear spells to pin it down, but the creature easily dodges them by jumping aside. The teacher urges Arel to get out before the monster breaks through the student's protective barrier, but Arel refuses, confident he can defeat it. The fire spears curve back and strike the manure from behind, pinning it in place. The teacher realizes Arel gave them a tracking effect. Arel then finishes the job using an explosion spell. When he exits the hallway, Teacher Bacchus declares him successful and invites him to join the second class. The next day, Kaido passes the news to Kova and Colette, but Arel feels unsatisfied because he wants to take the promotion exams at the other schools too. Arel wants to get promoted in his schools, and in reality he plans to get promoted in all 6 schools, leaving him completely speechless back at home. As Riener tries to cook on her own, she gets scared by the hot utensils. Pharaoh tells her she can take a break, but Riener decides to push through. After carefully bringing a fish above the hot oil, she drops it safely, but still gets startled by the splash. Meanwhile, Mira tells Rior to hurry it up, but Farah tells her to wait patiently. She teaches the young girl that all good things take time, just like how Errol became strong after countless hours of hard training. However, Mira thinks that Rior can't compare to Errol, and she agrees. Rior knows that he went through much harder training than she ever did, and wonders what he's doing right now in the Blue Magic Academy. Errol asks his teacher Hennel to take a promotion exam. She tells him to wait until the year's end, but Errol asks her if she can recommend him in an exceptional case, Henel reminds him that only special students can get exceptions, so he offers to show her his water magic. She sighs and offers to promote him if he performs well in his classes. However, Errol tells her he doesn't want to take the pointless classes in the first place, which angers her. As Henel feels insulted by Errol's comment, he clarifies that her classes aren't actually pointless, but they're too low level for someone with his skill. His arrogant comments enrage Henel even more, and she finally tells him to back up his talk and display his true skills to begin his exam. She takes him to a secluded yard for sparring. Watching Errol confront his own teacher, Kufa wonders if he can defeat a person close to being an archmage. After Errol gets done with his warm-up, Henel tells him they're not allowed to use physical attacks in the duel. He agrees to the rules and takes a few steps back, but she reminds him that he could get hurt in the fight. Seeing him accept the rules so easily, Henel wonders if he truly thinks he can beat her. Errol tells her that while he can't be 100% sure, he thinks he's got a good chance against her. His confidence enrages Henel, so she begins the duel with a powerful ice tornado spell. As the harsh winds freeze Errol into an ice block, Kufa gets worried for him. Henel thinks she has already won, so she tells Kufa to learn from the match he has just witnessed. Suddenly, Errol breaks the ice from inside, revealing the ice barrier skill he used to protect himself. Henel is finally surprised by his strength, so he summons a dozen ice spikes to attack her. She calms down, thinking it's only a basic skill, but Errol suddenly creates another batch of icicles until soon he shoots his icicles to attack Henel, but she creates her own ice edges to defend against them. Seeing her defend his attack, Errol thinks Henel is truly qualified to be a teacher. Meanwhile, Henel recalls that Errol also used the same attack in his entrance exam, so she thinks it's his specialty skill. She tells Errol that ice spells are her specialty too, so he challenges her to an ice edge duel. After Errol creates even more icicles than before, Henel easily matches his attack. But this time, Errol also forms 100 icicles to her left, right, and directly behind her, trapping her inside a circle of ice. Since changing an icicle's direction requires an incredibly complex spell modification, Henel realizes she's completely outmatched. Giving her no time to react, Errol launches all the ice edges towards her, so she blocks them with a barrier, as she blocks all of the attack. Henel is surprised that Errol's strikes aren't losing any power despite using so much mana. However, she notes that the ice edges are only freezing around her barrier, which is increasing its strength even more. She thinks that once Errol runs out of mana, it'll be her turn to attack. However, Errol tells her he's about to finish the match, which shocks her. She reminds him that not a single one of his icicles pierced her shield, so Errol tells her he didn't want that either. Then he launches a glacial lance from above, making Henel wonder how he has so much mana left. As the lance shoots towards her, Henel tries to block it with another ice shield, but the lance's sharp edge pierces through the shield and defeats her. After he wins the duel, he leaves the school and meets up with the kids. They learn that Henel directly promoted him to the class without any other examination, since he defeated her. Since his goal is to master all the different types of magic, Errol moves on to getting promoted in the Green School. As he talks to his wind teacher with Colette, she tells him that the Green School doesn't make exceptions like other schools. Hearing her teacher's firm refusal, Colette tries to drag Errol away. Then the teacher looks into the school's policy book and finds out that the headmaster can directly promote students if they want to. Errol thinks he's got a chance, but she tells him there's no way she'll let him bother the headmaster for his personal request. The teacher warns Errol that he'll be expelled for disturbing the headmaster, so he finally calms down. It's the last thing he wants. Colette wonders why Errol is in such a hurry to get promoted, so he tells her he's trying to catch up to a person he admires. Then he asks his teacher if he can directly show his skills to prove his strength, but she keeps refusing him. Finally, Colette thinks of another way Errol can prove himself. She recalls that after the school's flying race event, the headmaster personally presents the prize to the first-place winner. Instead of a prize for win, Errol thinks it's a great chance to directly meet the headmaster. But his teacher reminds him that the race is a fierce competition with over 300 participants. Since Errol is confident he can win, he soon goes out with the kids to participate in the race. While the kids cheer for Errol, the arrogant wind user from earlier, named Skake, walks up to him. Since Errol doesn't remember who he is, the boy's precious ego gets hurt. He introduces himself to Errol and claims he'll become the best wind user ever, but Errol tells him he's going to win the race. Skake remembers that Errol couldn't even fly 2 months ago, so the boy wonders how he plans to win the full race. Errol tells him he has practiced a lot since then, but Skake thinks there is no way he could improve himself so much in such a short amount of time. Soon, the event announcer, Grid, starts the event. He explains that the race will start from their school, looping around the entire Magic City before returning. Then he points to the headmaster, who is attending as a special guest, and tells the audience to cheer for him. As the headmaster tells everyone to stay safe, Grid then introduces the commentator, Instructor Dumm. The appearance of the handsome instructor sends all the girls into an uproar, so Kaido gets jealous that he's getting all the attention. With all the preparations complete, the participants get in line to begin the race. Soon Grid starts the race, and all the mages fly up. Unfortunately, many inexperienced mages collide with each other from the very start, leaving the skilled mages to actually compete in the race. As Grid comments on the match, suddenly a student loses control of his magic and crashes into the audience. While the kid lies in a mess of his own bones, Dumbwole points out that he made the same mistake last year. Meanwhile, a girl named Diani is leading the race within the top 15, and Doomlo notices a few new competitors among them as he looks at Skake and Errol. Skake wonders how Errol is keeping up with the fast speed. Errol tells him that the top competitors are actually going slow right now since they need to preserve stamina for the rest of the long race. Skake is shocked that Errol considers this high speed so slow, and tries to cover it up. In that moment, Errol notices a sharp turn coming up from the school gate's narrow path, and focuses on perfectly executing it. As Grid reaches the gate, he riles the audience to watch if the top competitors can make it through the turn. The first two of them are unable to turn around in time, so they go straight into the city's lake behind them. Skake makes sure to turn perfectly, and he makes it out after an intense effort. Skake thinks he has finally left Arrow behind, but he easily comes behind him at a relaxed pace. Soon, Grid follows the students as they fly around the city, noticing that the race is already halfway done. Seeing Dione leading the competition, Dum thinks she'll win, since she has won the last 3 races as well. However, Skak and Errol keep pace with her, so Grid thinks they could see an exciting upset. Meanwhile, Dione is surprised that first-grade students are keeping up with her speed, so she decides to get serious. She increases her speed and pulls even farther ahead. Skake tries his best to catch up as well. Unfortunately, he soon realizes that his body has run out of mana, so he admits defeat. Although Skake falls behind, Dummel praises him for his exceptional performance as a first-year student. Then Grid focuses his attention on Errol, who is still flying next to Dione. Seeing that he's keeping up, Dione speeds up even more. Errol knows that he can't go any faster than his current speed, so he decides to use a secret skill to boost it. With bursts of air under his boots, he catches up to Dione with the extra speed. Even Grid gets surprised by Errol's performance, so Dummel explains that Errol is condensing thick masses of air around his feet and kicking them off to propel himself forward. Grid is surprised since he didn't think such a spell was even possible. While Dummel points out that air bursts only give a small boost in speed, Errol has sped up dramatically with his kicks, so Grid wonders how he's doing it. To explain Errol's incredible speed, Dummel assumes his legs must be unbelievably strong, since only Supreme-class swordsmen can pull something like that off. Hearing Dummil's commentary, Errol feels impressed that he figured it out. In reality, he is using Soar, which is a swordsman's movement skill. As the final participants race towards the end, Grid wonders which of them is going to win. However, Dione thinks things won't be so simple, since they have to make another sharp turn to enter the school gate. At the student's current speed, such an abrupt turn would be almost impossible to pull off for them. Dione also notes that she has to slow down for the turn, and waits for Errol to slow down so she can gain some distance over him. However, he refuses to slow down even as they reach the gate, so Dione is forced to protect herself and remain behind. Grid praises Errol for taking the lead, but he thinks there's no way he can make the turn. Somehow, Errol proves him wrong by punching the air in front of him to knock his body back and reduce his speed. With the assistance of his punches, he easily goes through the gate and crosses the finish line, winning the very first race he's ever entered. After Errol wins, Dione congratulates him on the victory. While Dione feels determined to try again next year, Skake slowly pulls up behind them to finish in third. Afterward, the headmaster congratulates Errol and presents him with a certificate and medal for his victory. After accepting the awards, Errol asks the headmaster to promote him since he just proved his incredible abilities. The headmaster agrees to promote him to 2nd grade and asks where he learned his amazing magic. Errol tells him he just learned it from the school, but he doesn't believe he learned such an advanced flight magic from their basic class. Then the headmaster leaves after wishing him good luck. Errol feels happy that he has gotten his promotions in the red, blue, and green schools and looks forward to tackling the remaining 3 next. That was episode 9. Subscribe so you don't miss the next part, and watch the next video now. The episode begins with Errol heads to the Yellow Magic Institute to try the promotion exam. But to his disappointment, he finds out that the registration period for the assembly has passed, and without officially registering, he can't get the promotion. He can't believe he missed the deadline, and when he asks when the next assembly will be taking place, he is told that he will have to wait a few months. But that's way too long for him. He asks the woman if there's any way she can make an exception and let him join the current assembly since he went through all the trouble of creating a new golem for it. But there are strict rules about this kind of thing. However, just then, a man happens to be passing by, and when he hears Ariel mention that he created a new type of golem, he becomes interested and offers to register as his assistant, which will allow him to participate in the current assembly. And Ariel eagerly accepts, since it's the perfect solution to his problem. However, when he turns back to the receptionist, she tells Ariel she can't believe he agreed to be Rogwell's assistant. He asks if there's something wrong with Rogwell, and it's not like he's a bad person, but he is the best instructor when it comes to golem controlling, and he often goes all out against his students, crushing them completely. And he's kind of a jerk about it too, which is why no one wanted to be his assistant for this assembly. But even though that does sound like it could be a hassle to deal with as long as being Rogwell's assistant allows him to participate in the current assembly, Oral is fine with it. The day of the assembly arrives soon after, and after many brilliant presentations, it is finally Rogwell and Errol's turn to make a presentation. And Rogwell announces that he will be demonstrating the might of his golems today. All the students in the crowd know that means he plans to crush another student in a mock battle, and they feel bad for the poor sucker who got roped into being his assistant. Rogwell summons his battle golems and tells Alpha to do the same, so he obliges and calls for Alpha to come out. Just then, the battle golem Oral created walks out into the arena, and everyone is surprised since they have never seen a golem made out of metal before. Ragwell is especially skeptical since metal is too heavy to be controlled by earth magic, so he assumes Oral must have hidden someone in there. When he takes the golem's head off, he discovers that the body really is empty, and the metal just happens to be really light. Orel mentions that he alchemized the metal himself, and Rogwell takes that to mean he sacrificed sturdiness to make it light enough to control. And if that's the case, then it will never hold out against his earth golems. He orders the first golem to charge at Alpha, and he was expecting Alpha to fall apart after a single punch. But to his surprise, not only did Alpha block the punch, but in the aftermath, the arm of Ragwell's golem completely crumbles to dust, leaving everyone in utter shock. Ragwell can't believe Alpha was really able to withstand a hit from his golem, but losing an arm is no big deal, because with his expensive mana pool, he can regenerate and reinforce his golems as much as he wants. So he orders all of them to jump Arrow's golem at the same time. Arrow realizes it will be difficult to counter 4 golems at once, so he decides to use the special feature he built into Alpha and pulls 2 swords out of her back. Rockwell can see what it's trying to do, but he thinks it's a dumb move since golems are nowhere near flexible enough to use swords effectively in combat. However, in the next moment, Alpha dashes past all his golems, slicing them to pieces in an instant. With this, Aurel is officially the winner of this mock battle, but Rockwell doesn't understand how this could possibly happen. Arrow helps him back to his feet and explains that he intentionally designed the golem with lightweight alchemized metal and flexible joints to make it possible for it to perform complex movement without difficulty. And combining that with Arrow's existing knowledge of swordsmanship, it was easy to have it perform sword techniques. Ragwell admits that Arrow's golem is without a doubt better than his own. And Arrow asks if that means he is allowed to take the promotion exam now. But Ragwell tells him that instructor's assistants aren't actually considered for the early promotion. However, if Aurel is willing to join his research team in the meantime, then Ragwell promises to put in a good word for him with the headmaster. Aurel is fine with that, as long as it gets him promoted to the next grade. And since he's done here, he then heads to the White School and asks to take the promotion exam. The promotion process here is a lot more straightforward. So an exam is arranged for Aurel, and he is introduced to Kay Day, who will be in charge of his test. Aile notices that Kay seems to be blind, so he asks her if she needs any help getting around. But as much as she appreciates the concern, she tells him she is perfectly fine. She may not be able to see, but she can sense the magic in the world around her, and she can even tell the personality of someone from their magic as well. However, when she looks at Auriel, not only does he seem to have a bottomless reserve of Mama, but he also has several different types of magic swirling in his body at once, and this is the first time she has seen anything like it. She leads him to the test site, an underground dungeon which is infested by undead monsters, and Kay warns him to be careful since the undead will attack him on sight. But to her surprise, when Errol runs into a group of undead, he just begins spamming holy light to get rid of them. He then continues walking further into the dungeon, but Kayed tells him to wait because the test was actually just to defeat the undead close to the entrance, so he has already passed. Besides, she says if he keeps spamming spells like that, he's going to run out of magic sooner or later. But Earl tells her he has only used around 1% of his total magic. Either way, Kayde says they should start heading back to the entrance. But along the way, Errol notices something hiding in the corner over there, so he fires a ray of holy light at it. And it turns out that there was an undead hiding there. Heyday realizes this must be a Hyla one if it was able to hide its presence, but doesn't really care. So he cuts the undead off mid-speech and hits it with a Holy Cross spell to get rid of it. He then asks Kay to hurry up so they can get started on the paperwork for his promotion. But Kay still has a lot to process here because she can't believe what Eel just did. From what she could sense, that creature back there was an undead wight, and it was an advanced monster. Errol admits that it did seem a little different since it was able to talk, but he didn't think about it much. Kay then asks where Errol learned to use the Holy Cross spell since it's a Hylae spell that only expert exorcists gifted with incredible talent are able to use, but Aro always just thought of it as a slightly more powerful holy ray, so he doesn't see what's so special about it. The last one left is the Black Magic Institute, but as it turns out, there isn't a promotion exam here. Aro decides to spend his time doing some reading instead. Latalia eventually shows up, and he asks her why there's no promotion exam here, so she explains that there used to be one before, but that system kind of fell apart since there aren't many students attending the Black Institute in the first place. Errol admits that there are barely any students in here as he looks around the room, but then he notices the big room over there, and he has been curious about it for a while now. So he asks Latalia what it's for. She explains that the room is for students to test out their magic, since while the other institutes are able to freely test their magic outdoors, dark magic tends to be a little more dangerous. So she had a reinforced magic room built so her students can try out the spells they learned. If that's the case, then Errol decides to head in there to try out a few of the more complicated spells he read in these books. But once he's inside the room, as he is flipping through the books, he realizes that there's one here that he has never seen before. He opens the book and all of a sudden a burst of mana escapes from it. And RL can tell that the mana was pretty ominous, but this room is magically reinforced, so it shouldn't have been able to get outside. He looks around to see where it went, and that's when he spots someone floating up in the air. That thing doesn't seem like a human, so Errol asks if it's a demon, and the demon confirms it. It says it has been locked away in that book for years now, and none of the black mages here have been clueless enough to open it without checking what was first. He says he owes Ariel a lot of thanks for his help, but if he's going to get back to the demon world, then he's going to need a lot of human flesh and blood as a catalyst. So he intends to kill Ariel here and now. However, doesn't intend to go down so easily. So he shrugs off the demon's attack and prepares to cast an explosion spell at it. But to his surprise, it doesn't work. The demon laughs and tells Ariel that he already set up an anti-magic barrier in here, so no spells can be used in here. But that's not going to stop. He charges at the demon and it assumes he must be out of his mind, because there's no way a mage would be capable of fighting hand to hand. But before he could even finish his sentence, Ale had already sliced its head off with his wand. The demon can't believe what just happened, but it reattaches its head and comes to the conclusion that must be a magic swordsman. However, even if that's the case, it still thinks there's no way Ale can beat it because it has the blessing of immortality. So no matter how much Earl hits him, he won't die. That certainly makes dealing with the demon troublesome. But Errol recalls that demons use mana to maintain their physical forms, and even with immortality, taking damage over and over is bound to drain the demon's mana reserves. So he decides to just spam attack him, until he gives up. At first, the demon tells Yrel his attacks are pointless, but eventually he notices that his body is shrinking, and his tone suddenly changes as he now realizes he isn't as invincible as he thought he was. After a few hours of being beaten by Yrel, the demon has now been reduced to action figure size, and he is begging to have mercy on him, because if he shrinks any smaller than this, he might actually disappear altogether. Arl decides that he has fermented the demon enough for one day, so he agrees to let it go, but not before putting a seal of servitude in its chest. The demon immediately begins protesting, because it doesn't want to serve a lowly human. But the seal is already active, and it inflicts intense pain every time the demon tries to rebel against Errol. So he has no choice but to obey him. 6 months later, the headmasters of all 6 schools are having a meeting to discuss the new budget for the upcoming year. But the headmaster of the Black Institute gets up in a rage because he doesn't think it's fair that his budget is being cut by 60%, since he won't be able to do any proper research with an amount like that. However, the representative tells Black that his institute has failed to produce any meaningful results that contribute to the Magic City, so it's natural that his budget is being cut. All the other headmasters start making fun of Black and call him a weirdo for dedicating so much time to black magic. The headmaster of the White Institute even tries to convince the city representative to consider banning black magic altogether, but the rep says he has no intention of doing that. He's simply here so they can proceed with budget allocation. So he asks if there are any more objections, but everyone seems to be in agreement. So, he says the budget will be finalized following the results of the magic tournament. All the headmasters get up to leave, but Blag is still frozen in place because he can't believe his institute's budget is being cut by so much. The rep tells him that glaring isn't going to solve his problem, and if he really wants to increase his institute's budget, then he needs to prove the value of black magic during the magic tournament. In fact, if the Black Institute manages to win, he promises not to cut the Black Institute's budget at all, but that's only if the Magic Institute can win. That same day, Errol and his friends are walking through the streets, and he wonders why everyone is putting up so many decorations. Kufa can't believe Aurel hasn't heard of the festival yet, when it's one of the biggest events held in the Magic City. Aurel never really paid much attention to festivities like this, but he has heard of the Institute Tournament, which is the festival's main event. In fact, all the headmasters have asked him to participate in the rookie segment, but he hasn't decided which school he wants to represent yet, so he will be meeting with them tomorrow morning to discuss it. Meanwhile, that night, in a desperate attempt to secure victory for himself in the tournament, Black spends a lot of time creating a magic circle that connects to the demon realm, and from it he summons a Hylae demon known as Gluttony. He intends to use it to prove how useful black magic is, but all of a sudden, the slime betrays and swallows him whole. This was the end of episode 10. Subscribe to not miss the next. A couple of days pass, and Errol wakes up fresh from a dream, replaying everything he's been through since arriving at the Magical Academy. He confesses to Maddie that he still hasn't decided which school he's going to represent in the tournament. Maddie warns him that he can't stall forever. He needs to make a decision, and fast. Back at the academy, the headmasters from the 6 schools are gathered, getting ready to reveal their champions. Since this tournament is the ultimate showdown for the best first-year students, the trash talk starts immediately. Each headmaster is bragging, convinced that their school is going to bag the first-place trophy. However, the mood shifts when they notice the headmaster of the Dark Magic School is a no-show. To be fair, nobody really understands that school anyway. To this day, it's a mystery who the students are, who the faculty is, or if they even teach anything at all. Just as they start worrying about the schedule, Errol strolls through the gate, announcing he's ready for the meeting. Suddenly, every single teacher pipes up, claiming that Errol is the champion representing their school. The faculty is completely shocked and confused because every headmaster was convinced Errol belonged to them, but before they can untangle the mess, a massive explosion from the city shakes everyone to their core. Errol instantly realizes something is wrong and starts worrying about his friend's safety. Over at the main arena, Call, Kaido, and Kufa are helping set up when Kufa spots something looming past the walls. They turn around and are confused to see a giant slime monster snatching up a bunch of goblins. At first, Kaido thinks it might be a monster controlled by the Dark School to clean up the arena, but confusion turns to horror when the slime just inhales the goblins and tries to force its way inside. Kaido screams a warning, and total chaos breaks out as every student on the ground makes a run for the school. Realizing people are in danger, Errol takes to the sky to scout the situation, with the Wind School Master flying right beside him while the other teachers rush the grounds. Students are scrambling everywhere to escape certain death, but that hot-headed fire kid decides he's strong enough to handle it. He stands his ground and unloads attack after attack on the slime. To his horror, his strikes don't even scratch the beast, and it keeps charging right at him. He would have been toast if Dione from the Wind School hadn't swooped in like a falcon to save his butt, telling him to stand down if he wants to stay alive. Totally defeated and humiliated in front of the crowd, the brat apologizes to her, promising never to pull a stunt like that again. Meanwhile, Kufa, Call, and Kaido are sprinting for the exit when Call trips over a rock and hits the ground. Kaido and Kufa stop immediately to help her up, but Kaido realizes with a sinking feeling that the monster is way too close for them to just run away now. Kufa immediately whips out her wand and tries using an ice wall spell, blocking the slime's path. For the moment, they think that they have bought some important time for themselves, but at the very next moment, the slime effortlessly breaks through the wall, continuing his path of destruction towards them. Kaido decides to try his luck as well, and uses a modified attack that Errol taught him. But even that turns out to be of no use, as the monster eats it up like nothing. Paul is beyond scared at this point, but suddenly she remembers Errol telling her to have faith in herself and fight till the end. Drawing inspiration from that, she stands back on her shaky feet, forcing herself to face her fears and uses her strongest tornado attack on the monster. To her surprise, the monster doesn't even budge from its place, and at that point, Call smiles at her own weakness, claiming that she is glad that she at least fought till the very end without worrying about messing things up. They all stand there utterly defeated, ready to face their death. But, as the slime shoots out a bunch of its tentacles forward, none reach the group, as Errol jumps in between and slashes them to shreds, saving their lives. He turns back at them and smiles, claiming that they did very well, but from here, he will deal with it. The remaining professors also arrive at the scene like a bunch of Power Rangers, and the Lightmaster tells the kids to run off to the city hall while they deal with this monstrosity. Errol asks whether he should stay and fight, but the Flame Master tells him that he should return as well, not worrying about them as all the masters at the academy are supreme class in their magical affinity. The Blue School professor tells Errol that it's the duty of the teachers to protect the kids from any harm, and that's what they intend to do. The master from the Yellow School claims that the beast seems to have made out of black magic and wonders whether the professor of the Dark School was involved in this. The Red Professor claims that this monster might be resistant to magic, as the kids tried but failed making a dent at its surface. The Blue Professor tells him that at the end of the day those were very low-lowered spells used by a bunch of first-year students, and their magic should definitely be enough to deal with this ugly beast. The Blue Professor uses her Parafrost spell, while the Light Magic Professor uses her Holy Cross spell, which first freezes the monster before trying to destroy it. But to their surprise, that was of no use, and the monster looks just as strong and energetic as before. The Red Master and the Wind Master decide to try their luck at it as they use their spells synergistically, producing a huge flaming tornado which the Blue teacher thinks should be enough to destroy most of the monsters from the face of Earth. To their surprise, the monster seems to be completely unaffected. In fact, the Wind Master notes that the monster seems to be getting even bigger and stronger the more they are using their spells on it. Finally, the monster decides to strike back and shoots its tentacles at them, but the Yellow Master immediately uses an Earth Wall spell to create a shield between them, capturing the monster inside a huge prison. They all get a moment of relief as they thought that the magic was enough to contain the beast, but to their horror, the wall starts breaking. The Yellow Master tells his peers that they must figure out a way to stop it soon, since he won't be able to hold on for much longer. The Flame Master suggests combining all their magics at once and attack the monster, hoping that it would overwhelm and completely destroy the beast. But the Light Master claims that it is a singularly bad idea, since the monster seems to be absorbing and growing from the magic damage, and they don't know how strong it could get if they all poured their energy into it. The Blue Master starts freaking out, wondering how the hell are they supposed to fight something like this. The Slimes manages to slowly break out of its prison while Errol observes it from above with Maddie. Realizing that he seems to have learned every single magic spell there is to learn at this academy, Maddie asks, what exactly does he mean by that? And Errol claims that he has learned all the magic spells from the book and just wanted to see what the masters were capable of and whether they had any magical abilities which he hasn't learned before. Now that he has seen it all, he thinks that he has learned everything there was to learn at the Magic Academy. Maddie looks at the slime, claiming that it's not any simple monster, but a demon from the demon realm. And that's why it seems to be so troublesome for the teachers here. Maddie tells Errol that the monster has the ability to absorb any and everything that they throw at it, and grow bigger and stronger through that. Errol asks, what if they use a magic so strong that it overwhelms the demon, or use physical attacks so destructive that the monster can't even comprehend it in the first place? Maddie claims that he doesn't think that anyone has the magic or the physical abilities to do that much damage here, but Errol claims that he is going to try it regardless. He immediately summons a sword and rushes at the monster, delivering a massive strike at it, cutting off a huge chunk from it. Maddie is surprised that he was able to cut the slime, but Errol is not happy as within moments, the slime manages to regrow the damaged part. Suddenly, all the teachers arrive, floating on a flying carpet, asking Errol whether he is a magic swordsman class, but Errol replies that he is classless. They tell him not to joke right now, but he tells them to back off, as the slime attacks people with loads of mana, as that is how it grows stronger. The teachers quickly realize that the slime is causing all this destruction in the city because it is heading towards the city hall, where all their students are present at once. The Red teacher refuses to leave a student behind to fight alone, but Errol tells them to make sure the other students are safe first, as he can take care of himself and slow the beast down. The teachers begrudgingly agree that they are of no use here, and decide to head towards the city hall. Errol quickly creates a stone wall to capture the monster before summoning a bunch of golems and using the infinite break attack. To his surprise, even such a strong attack wasn't really able to do any real damage, as the golem starts regenerating once again. At this point, Errol decides to try his luck with magic again, and takes out his wand before preparing a huge flame magic attack. Maddie claims that it won't be enough, but Errol isn't planning to use just the flame spell. To everyone's surprise, he starts channeling through all the different magic circles, one by one, before combining them into one huge LGBTQ circle. He remembers his dad telling him to avoid using this magic as if done wrong. It could be catastrophic. But more than that, Errol realizes that he doesn't seem to have enough mana reserves, and his dad's mana must be off the charts. Just when he thought that his plan was going to fail, suddenly a bunch of mana starts flooding in his body, as through the power of friendship and the professors manage to channel the mana of their students into Errol, who uses the incredibly powerful attack to completely decimate every single thing beneath him, removing the slime from existence in one fell swoop. With that, the students cheer as Errol descends down back to the ground while the teachers huddle around him, asking how the hell did he manage to use all the spells at once, as that magic is legendary class and only mage lords can do that. He replies that his father is a mage lord and told him that only through mastering the magic from each school can a person become a mage lord. The professors soon realize that their study system seems to be flawed, as they only ever teach one form of magic to their students, which means that they can never really produce any mage lords. Suddenly, Errol spies a little piece of the slime still moving and picks it up before taking it back home. He uses a servant seal on it and makes it another one of his familiars, useful for getting rid of trash. Suddenly, Kufa, Kaido, and Call all burst in through the door, asking whether he is going to leave. Errol tells them that he is in fact going back home, since there is nothing left for him to learn here. And from home, he will head towards the city of monsters and learn all he can about all the different kinds of monsters present in the world. The kids are a little sad that Errol is leaving, but they all say their goodbyes and watch as Errol leaves into the sunset back towards his village. But that's where this video ends. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. We learn that there's a princess who owns a vast empire. She has tasked a witch with monitoring Earl and gathering all possible information about him because she wants to meet him as soon as possible. We see this princess talking to her assistant, asking, "Why are you late in bringing Earl to me?" The assistant replies that they are doing their best and will bring him very soon. The princess appears very excited to see Earl as quickly as possible. Later, we see Earl flying through the sky. The demon asks him, "You haven't returned home in a long time, have you?" Earl replies, "Yes. I haven't returned home or seen my family in about a year because I was studying at the Magic Academy." The demon thinks to himself, wondering if Earl's parents are superhumans like him. Earl tells him, "My mother is the Queen of Swords and my father is the Lord of Magic." The demon is shocked and says, "It's only natural that someone with all your power would have parents who are extraordinary like you." On his way, Earl spots some hot springs and decides to spend the night there, planning to continue his journey to his village the next morning. We see him relaxing in the hot springs. Even the slime monster is sitting in a small tub. Suddenly a girl appears, greets Earl, and gets into the hot springs with him. Earl doesn't know who she is, and the demon gets scared and hides behind him. She starts getting to know Earl and asks for his name. She asks, "Is this your first time here?" He replies, "I was just passing by chance, liked the hot springs and decided to spend the day here before returning to my city tomorrow." The demon warns him, "Be careful of this girl. She doesn't seem normal at all and has a big secret." Earl replies, "You're right. I'm keeping a close eye on her. Let's see what she wants in the end." The girl asks him about the goal of his journey. He tells her, "My goal is to be the strongest adventurer in the world." She asks if he likes fighting. He says, "I don't care much for fighting, but when I find someone with great power, I like to fight them, to see if an unranked person like me can defeat them." She is surprised and asks, "Since you are unranked, you surely face a lot of discrimination and bullying, right?" He says, "Exactly. Sometimes I do find people like that." She suggests, "Why don't you come live in our empire? Our empire has a very just princess. Equality is her #1 priority. Whether you have a rank or not, you will be treated well." However, Earl refuses her offer, saying he isn't interested in living in their empire, and he leaves her. The girl is astonished that he rejected her offer. Later, we see Earl eating, with the slime eating along with him, literally swallowing food along with the plates. The demon asks, "Why did you refuse her offer? You could have lived in a great place with equality where no one would bully you. That would have been my chance for you to free me so I could live freely without being your servant." Earl replies, "You will stay with me because I haven't decided what to do with you yet." The next morning, as he continues his way through the forest, the girl appears again and tells him to stop. She introduces herself as Kuroha, one of the generals of the empire, sent by the princess to arrest Earl and bring him to her. She says, "It's better if you come with me quietly because I don't want to use violence against you." Earl asks, "And if I refuse, what will you do?" She replies, "No one can refuse the orders of the princess of the empire." Earl retorts, "I don't care about your princess and I don't even know her." He asks what the princess wants with him. Kureha says, "Honestly, I don't know, but she asked me to find an unranked person named Earl and bring him to her." Earl refuses to go. She assures him the princess won't hurt him. Earl replies, "Clearly you are stupid and don't listen well. I'll say it for the millionth time. I am not coming with you." She says, "Fine, you're forcing me to use violence." She disappears and instantly reappears behind him to attack, but Earl vanishes and dodges her strike. She is surprised by his great speed. Earl then delivers a powerful kick that sends her flying. He senses 10 shinobi ninjas around him and tells them, "Come out, I know you are there and that there are 10 of you." They are shocked that he located them despite their stealth skills. He explains he sensed them through their energy. The witch watching Earl notices Kureha has been beaten and asks her what happened. Kureha says, "This guy is extremely tough. You must be careful when fighting him." The witch heals Kureha. Earl realizes Kureha is the strongest among them and the ninjas are weak. Kureha orders the ninjas to attack all at once. Simultaneously, other adventurers and a general riding a huge dragon arrive, searching for Earl. They are shocked to find Kiriaha and her fighters defeated on the ground. Earl appears, eating, and admits he did it. They don't believe an unranked person could defeat her. They introduce themselves as the 8 generals responsible for protecting the princess and are tasked with capturing Earl. Earl says, "It looks like you want to fight, just like Korea. I have a request. Use your best combat skills so I might learn something useful." They feel he is mocking them, but agree, telling him to try to stay alive because the princess wants him alive. They unleash their best attacks. Shortly after, we see them all beaten on the ground. Earl wonders why the princess is so determined to meet him. Kureha calls out to him, admitting he is strong but warning that the princess is leagues stronger and he cannot defeat her. This excites Earl, and he decides to go meet her to see her power. He arrives at the Empress's castle. The doors lock behind him, and the remaining generals appear, warning him not to resist. The demon laughs, knowing they are about to get beaten. Inside, the princess waits. Suddenly, the doors open, and 2 generals fall to the floor, defeated. Earl enters and asks, "Where is this princess who wants to see me?" The assistant draws her weapon to protect her, but the princess runs to Earl, shouting, "Big brother," and hugs him. We learn that the princess is his older sister, Estia. Earl is annoyed and asks for an explanation. She reveals she built this empire to ensure equality for everyone, specifically for him, fulfilling a promise she made. She decides he will live with her and says she will send for their parents and little sister, Mira. Earl thanks her but refuses, saying he cannot live there as he has other goals. He wants to explore the world and gain more experience to become the best adventurer. He explains that his recent journey taught him much, and he wants to continue without restrictions. Estia pretends to agree, but as he turns to leave, she laughs and activates her control skill, ordering him to stop. Earl is forced to stop. She commands him to live with her and says she will never let him go. As she approaches to grab him, Earl suddenly kicks her in the face. We realize he was tricking her. Estia is shocked that her magic didn't work. Earl explains, "I know your magic relies on voice commands, so I used wind magic on my ears to block your voice." Estia cries in frustration. Earl mocks her, asking if she used this skill to control her servants. The generals defend her, saying they serve her willingly because she is kind and just. Earl says, "Fine, if you like it, enjoy each other, but leave me out of it," and leaves. Estia vows she will force him to come back one day. Earl returns to his village. His parents welcome him, and his mother hugs him. His little sister Mira arrives, and he gives her the demon and slime as pets to play with. Lena, the maid, is happy to see him and asks for details. Earl suggests they spar again first, confident she has improved. The next morning, Mira comes out screaming that Earl has left again. Lena laughs and reassures her. The parents say Earl is a powerful adventurer now, and nothing will harm him. We see Earl flying in the sky, heading toward new adventures to prove to the world that he is the strongest adventurer. And with that, the first season of our hero Earl's story ends. If you are excited for the second season, don't forget to